Welcome to MrDantello, and thank you for being here. This video features immersive, scary stories from abandoned places and lost locations, created for calm nighttime listening. If you enjoy the video, like, subscribe, and tell us where you're listening from. Make yourself comfortable. Story 1. The night the staff vanished, mid-shift, leaving every key card in place. I took the job at the Aurora Grand because I was out of options. After the layoff at the data center, a strategic optimization, they called it, I'd burned through my severance paying off Dad's medical debt. The apartment complex gave me 3 days to vacate after I missed rent twice. When the Craigslist ad popped up, night auditor urgent, 18 HRI plus room, no background check. I didn't question why a luxury hotel in downtown Seattle would hire someone with no hospitality experience. I just showed up at 10 p.m. on a rain-lashed Tuesday, my backpack smelling of stale coffee and desperation. The Aurora Grand wasn't grand anymore. Once a 1920s jewel with gilded ceilings and crystal chandeliers, it now huddled between skyscrapers like a forgotten relic. Its marble lobby was scratched and dull, the gold leaf peeling like sunburnt skin. The night manager who interviewed me, Martha, according to her tarnished name tag, moved like a ghost herself. Pale, trembling hands. She never made eye contact. Shifts 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., she rasped, leading me past empty concierge desks and velvet ropes coated in dust. Front desk only, no housekeeping, no room service, just answer phones, log deliveries, reset the thermostats in vacant rooms, and never touch the staff key cards. Staff key cards? I asked. She stopped at a brass elevator. The doors slid open with a groan, revealing a cabin lit by a single flickering bulb. Every employee wears one. Blue plastic, magnetic stripe. They're sensitive. If you find one on the floor, leave it. Don't pick it up. Don't look at the number. Her eyes darted to the mirrored walls of the elevator, especially not in the reflections. The room they gave me, Suite 412, was on the 4th floor. Complimentary accommodation for night staff, Martha said, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. The suite was opulent but decaying. Damask wallpaper peeling at the seams, a chandelier misses half its crystals, a 4-poster bed with a mattress that sagged like a hammock, and directly across from the door, dominating the far wall, hung a full-length mirror in an ornate silver frame. It reflected the room with unsettling clarity, making the space feel both larger and infinitely smaller. Lights go out at midnight for energy conservation, Martha added, handing me a key card on a frayed lanyard. Yours is black. Only opens this suite and the front desk. The blue cards open everything else. Everything. She paused at the elevator. One more thing. At 3 a.m., you'll hear the staff elevator chime. Don't answer it. Don't look. Just wait it out. She vanished into the elevator before I could ask why. Midnight came. The lobby lights dimmed automatically, plunging the space into gloom, broken only by emergency exit signs and the glow of my computer monitor. I logged into the front desk system, Aurora Grand Management Suite VO.1, and scrolled through room statuses. 87 vacant, 3 occupied, all on the top floor. No check-ins tonight. Just me and the silence. At 12:47 a.m., the phone rang. I jumped. The sound was jarringly loud in the hushed lobby. I grabbed the receiver. Aurora Grand, night auditor speaking. Static. Then a child's voice, thin and watery. Is Eleanor there? Eleanor? I don't think. Room 217. the voice whispered. She promised she'd read to me. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. Room 217 was vacant, had been for weeks, according to the log. I checked the system again. Vacant. I made a note. Possible prank call, verify line security. At 1:15 a.m., I heard the first key card. It wasn't a sound. It was a presence. A cold spot near the elevators. I looked up. There, stuck in the card reader of the staff-only elevator, a blue key card. Its lanyard dangled like a noose. I remembered Martha's warning. Don't pick it up. Don't look at the number. I turned away, typing furiously at the computer, pretending not to see it. But in the reflection of the monitor, I caught the card's number. 47ers. Just a glitch, I told myself. Someone forgot it. At 1:38 a.m., another one on the concierge desk. Blue plastic gleaming under the emergency light. Number 22, then one on a marble floor near the lobby restroom. So 9. Another taped to the vending machine. 35. They kept appearing, always when I wasn't looking directly, always in my peripheral vision or reflected surfaces. The lobby filled with them, scattered like fallen leaves. Each card felt heavy, watchful. At 2:59 a.m., the staff elevator chimed. Ping. The sound echoed in the dead air. I froze, my hand hovering over the mouse. Martha's warning screamed in my head. Don't answer it. Don't look. I stared at my screen, at the glowing cursor on the room log. The elevator door slid open with a soft whoosh. No footsteps, no voices, just the smell drifting out. A sweet, cloying scent of roses and wet earth, like the air after a grave is dug. I kept my eyes down, counted to 10, 20, 30. The doors sighed shut. The chime echoed again as it closed. Ping. Silence. I exhaled, trembling. That's when I saw the security monitor. The lobby camera feed showed the staff elevator doors opening at 3:00 a.m. Sharp, empty. But the camera in the third-floor hallway C, showed something else. The blue key cards, dozens of them, not scattered, arranged. Laid out on the carpet in a perfect spiral, starting at the elevator doors and winding toward room 314. At the spiral's center lay a single item, Martha's name tag. I rewound the footage, watched the timestamp tick backward from 3:01 a.m. to 2:58 a.m. The hallway was empty. Then at 2:59:47, the key cards began to fall, not from hands, from the air itself. They fluttered down like dead leaves, landing with impossible precision. At 3:03, the elevator doors opened on an empty shaft. And for 3 frames, less than a tenth of a second, a shadow flickered in the mirror at the end of hallway C, tall, thin, its head brushing the ceiling tiles. I vomited in the wastebasket under the desk. The front desk phone rang again. I let it scream into voicemail. When it stopped, a new sound took its place, a rhythmic thump, thump, thump from above, from the 4th floor, my floor. It was slow, deliberate, like something heavy being dragged across carpet. Thump, thump, thump. It stopped outside my suite door. I held my breath. The doorknob didn't turn, no scratching, just silence. Then a soft clink, something sliding under the door. I crept forward. On the Persian rug lay a blue key card, number 400. My suite number. I backed away, heart slamming against my ribs. The thump, thump, thump started again, fading down the hall toward the emergency stairs. I waited until the sound vanished before peeling the card off the rug with a pen. It was ice cold. I dropped it into the desk drawer and locked it. At 4:17 a.m., I found the staff room. I was checking thermostat settings on the 3rd floor when I noticed it. A door labeled Employees Only. Behind a potted fern. The handle turned easily. Inside was a time capsule of ordinary lives interrupted. Coffee mugs sat half full on a table, steam long gone, but the smell of burnt beans still sharp in the air. A sweater draped over a chair. A phone screen lit up with a text thread. "You coming to Jen's B-Day?" Followed by "Running late, shift from hell." But it was the key cards that froze my blood. They weren't scattered. They were displayed. Taped to the walls, stuck in the microwave, wedged between the pages of a dog-eared romance novel. Every blue card in the hotel, I realized with dawning horror. Over 100 of them, each labeled with a name written in shaky handwriting on masking tape. Martha, Chen, Diego, Priya, Ben. And one on the bulletin board, circled in red marker. Eleanor. Beneath Eleanor's card hung a Polaroid photo. A woman in a 1970s floral dress stood before the Aurora Grand's original marquee, smiling wide. Her eyes were bright, alive, on the back, in the same handwriting as the names. She promised she'd read to me. She lied. The microwave beeped. I hadn't touched it. The door swung open. Inside sat a single blue key card on a paper plate. Number 1000. I ran. Back at the front desk, I called 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. "Aurora Grand Hotel, what's your emergency?" "Everyone's gone. The staff. They vanished. There are key cards everywhere." "Sir, calm down. Which room are you calling from?" "I'm not in a room. I'm the night auditor. Look at your logs." "I don't see any active reservation for a night auditor tonight. The Aurora Grand has been closed for renovations since October." The line went dead. I checked the computer. The room log was gone, replaced by a single line of text scrolling endlessly on the screen. They forgot to remember us. Now we remember them. The lobby lights died. Only the exit signs glowed, casting bloody light on the sea of blue key cards scattered across the floor. The staff elevator chimed. Ping. The doors opened on darkness. From within came the smell of roses and wet earth, stronger now, and a sound I hadn't heard before. A low, wet clicking, like teeth snapping together. I grabbed my backpack, sprinting for the main doors. They were locked, bolted from the inside. I pounded on the glass. The street outside was empty. No cars, no people, just fog swallowing the city lights. In the reflection of the glass door, I saw them, dozens of figures standing in the lobby behind me, not solid, translucent, wearing hotel uniforms from different eras, bellhops and pillbox hats, maids in frilly caps, concierges in bow ties, all staring at me, all holding blue key cards. At the center stood Martha. Her face was smooth, blank, no eyes, no mouth, just pale skin stretched tight over bone. In her hand she held key card. 1000 Da. She raised it slowly, pointing toward the staff elevator. The clicking sound grew louder, closer. It wasn't coming from the elevator shaft. It was coming from the mirrors. I turned. Every mirror in the lobby, the one behind the front desk, the ornate one by the grand staircase, the small one in the elevator bank, was rippling like water. From the glass, pale hands emerged, reaching, grasping. The clicking was the sound of their jaws working in the void between reflections. I ran for the emergency stairs. The door was propped open with a blue key card. 13 I slammed through it, taking the steps 2 at a time. On the 4th floor landing, I froze. The mirror at the end of the hall was gone. In its place yawned a dark archway, not a doorway, an opening torn in the fabric of the wall itself. Beyond it lay not the next floor, but a forest at twilight. ancient pines, a still black lake, and standing on the shore facing away from me, a woman in a 1940s floral dress. Eleanor, from Camp Everstill, from the Ravenswood Grand. She turned. Her face was bloated, blue-tinged. Water weeds tangled in her hair. In her hand, she held a blue key card. Number 315. She smiled. "You heard me calling," she gurgled, lake water bubbling between her lips. "I get so lonely in the between." I stumbled backward, slamming the stairwell door shut, locked it with my black key card, leaned against it, gasping. The clicking had stopped. The lobby was silent. Dawn came at 6:03 a.m. Weak gray light seeped through the lobby windows. The blue key cards were gone. The staff room was empty, sterile, smelling of bleach. The microwave was cold. The Polaroid of Eleanor had vanished. Even the coffee mugs were clean and stacked neatly in a cupboard. At 6:58 a.m., a man in a crisp suit arrived. "Maintenance," he said, showing no ID. His eyes were the color of wet stone. "Power surge last night. Wiped all the systems. You'll need to fill out incident reports." He handed me a clipboard. "Martha quit. Didn't even give notice." "She didn't quit," I whispered. She left," he interrupted, his gaze sliding to the mirrors. "They all leave eventually. The hotel doesn't like to be forgotten." He tapped the clipboard. "Your signature here, and initial page 3. I signed. Anything to get out. He led me to the service elevator, the one that didn't chime. "Front entrance is under renovation," he lied. The elevator smelled of roses and damp soil. As the doors closed, he pressed the B1 button. "Basement parking. Your car's waiting." The elevator descended 1 floor, 2, 3. It kept going. The lights flickered. The man's reflection in the mirrored walls began to blur, to stretch. His suit melted into a bellhop uniform. His face dissolved into smooth, featureless flesh. In his hand, he held a blue key card. "1,000. "Almost there," he whispered, his voice layered with a clicking sound. I jammed my thumb on the emergency stop button. The elevator shuddered to a halt between floors. Darkness. The clicking grew frantic. Hungry, I pried open the doors with my hands. Cold air rushed in, not a basement. A narrow service corridor lined with pipes. And on the floor, illuminated by a single bare bulb, lay a blue key card. Trelhueld. I ran. Through boiler rooms and storage closets following signs for exit. Burst through a rusted metal door into a pre-dawn alley. Rain soaked through my shirt. I didn't stop running until I reached my car 3 blocks away. I drove for 2 days, slept in rest stops, bought a burner phone with my last $20, changed my name to Mark Reynolds at a DMV in Montana, rented a studio apartment above a laundromat. No mirrors. I covered the bathroom mirror with a towel. The bedroom had none. I was safe. I was forgettable. Last night, I woke to the smell of roses. The apartment was freezing. My breath fogged in the air. On the kitchen counter, beside the coffee maker, lay a blue key card. Twenthaled, still damp, still smelling of lake water. I threw it out the window, watched it vanish into the alley below. This morning, it was back on my pillow. I packed a bag, left the apartment keys on the counter, drove west until the mountains gave way to ocean. Checked into a cheap motel in a town called Seabrook. Room 7. No mirror in the bathroom, just a curtain over the shower. I slept for 10 hours. I woke to the sound of dripping water, not from the faucet, from the ceiling. I sat up. Dark droplets fell onto the bedspread, thick, viscous, smelling of roses and wet earth. I looked up. Water seeped through a crack in the ceiling plaster. But it wasn't water. It was black fluid, thick as oil, dripping steadily onto my chest. Where it touched my skin, it burned cold. And in the puddle forming on the bedspread, the reflection wasn't the water-stained ceiling. It was the lobby of the Aurora Grand. The mirrors were gone. In their place stood archways, dozens of them, leading to forests, to lakes, to crumbling sanatoriums and rotting cabins. And standing before each archway holding a blue key card were the staff, Martha, Chen, Diego, Eleanor, all smiling with too many teeth. Martha's reflection reached out a dripping hand. In her palm lay a new key card, blank, waiting for a number. "You can't outrun what you carry," she gurgled, lake water pouring from her mouth. "The hotel remembers everyone who forgets it." I scrambled out of bed, grabbing my bag, ran for the door. It wouldn't open, locked from the outside. The dripping intensified. The black fluid pooled on the floor, spreading toward my feet. Shapes moved within it, pale hands, tangled hair, wide, unblinking eyes. The clicking started, not from the walls, from inside my own skull. I smashed the window with the motel room chair, climbed out onto the fire escape as the fluid rose, lapping at the bed frame, dropped to the alley below, ran. Didn't stop until I reached the highway. Hitched a ride with a trucker hauling lumber to Spokane. He dropped me at a Greyhound station. I bought a one-way ticket to Chicago. The bus was warm, smelled of stale coffee and diesel. I took a window seat at the back, closed my eyes, listened to the hum of tires on asphalt. Safe, moving. At the first rest stop near Boise, I used the restroom. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The sinks were chipped porcelain, and there, taped to the mirror above the hand dryer, was a blue key card. 12. I tore it down, crumpling it in my fist, threw it into a trash can, washed my hands until the skin turned raw. Back on the bus, I kept my eyes closed, pretended to sleep. But in the reflection of the dark window, I saw it. The bus windows weren't reflecting the highway. They showed the Aurora Grand lobby. The mirrors were intact now, and in each one, standing just behind my seat, was Martha. Her hand rested on the headrest. In her palm, she held a blank blue key card. She was writing on it with a finger dipped in black fluid. I looked away, pressed my forehead to the cool glass, closed my eyes tighter. When I opened them, the card lay on my lap. Not blank anymore. The number was 1,000. And it was warm. With that, the story is over. Let's move to the next story. Every room on floor 13 held an empty chair facing the window. I took the job at the Grand Meridian because the rent on my studio apartment was due, and the only other offer I'd gotten that week was cleaning cat urine out of a meth lab for $20 an hour. The ad was clipped from a physical newspaper, the Portland Chronicle, dated 1998, and taped to a bulletin board in the back of a pawn shop that smelled of gun oil and despair. Night watchman needed. Grand Meridian Hotel. $200 cash week. Must start immediately. No questions asked. The address led me to a decaying Art Deco tower on the edge of what used to be Portland's theater district, now a graveyard of boarded-up cinemas and abandoned speakeasies swallowed by weeds. The Grand Meridian hadn't operated as a hotel since 1973, when a fire in the penthouse suite killed 17 guests. The top 3 floors had been sealed off by court order. The rest of the building was a skeleton, held together by pigeon nests, and rust. The man who hired me didn't give his name. He called himself the caretaker. He met me in the lobby at 11 p.m., a gaunt figure in a moth-eaten velvet smoking jacket, his face half hidden in shadow beneath a bowler hat. His hands were spotted with age, but his grip was iron when he pressed a heavy brass key into my palm. 12 midnight to 6 a.m., he rasped, his voice like gravel under tires. Patrol floors 1 through 12. Log any disturbances in the ledger. Do not go above the 12th floor, and whatever you hear from 13, ignore it. What's on 13? I asked. My breath fogged in the unheated lobby. He didn't answer, just pointed a bony finger at the elevator bank. The service lift, only one that works. It stops at 12. The button for 13 is covered. Keep it covered. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and the chairs. Chairs? Every room on 13 has one, an armchair, facing the window. Don't touch them. Don't sit in them. Don't even look at them too long. He adjusted his hat, his eyes glinting in the dim emergency light. They're not empty. The elevator groaned as it ascended, its cables shrieking like tortured metal. The lobby vanished behind brass doors etched with tarnished peacocks. Floor after floor of darkness slid past the indicator dial 1, 2, 3. By floor 7, the light bulbs in the hallway were all shattered, leaving only the moonlight bleeding through grimy windows to cast long, distorted shadows. I stepped out on 12, the highest floor I was allowed. The air was thick with dust and the smell of dry rot. My footsteps echoed on marble floors cracked like broken ice. My room, a converted linen closet, was barely big enough for a cot and a hot plate, but it was warm, and it was free. I didn't sleep. I sat by the door, listening. At 1:17 a.m., the scratching started, not from the walls, from above. A slow, deliberate scrape of wood on wood, like a chair, being dragged across a floor. It came from floor 13. I pressed my ear to the ceiling tiles. Beneath the scraping was a sound like breathing, wet, labored, hungry. I told myself it was rats. Rats in the walls, rats in the ceiling, rats in the hollow spaces where 17 people had burned. At 3:03 a.m., the chair scraped again. Closer this time, right above my room. Then silence, a silence so deep it pressed against my eardrums. And in that silence, a whisper. Not words, just a sigh that carried a weight of decades of smoke and sorrow. I lasted 3 nights. On the 4th night, the power died. The emergency lights flickered once, then died, plunging the 12th floor into absolute darkness. My flashlight beam cut a shaky path down the hallway as I checked room doors. All locked, all quiet, until I reached the service elevator. Its doors were open, not just open, jammed open. The brass paneling was dented inward, as if something heavy had thrown itself against it from the other side. And on the floor of the elevator cab, illuminated by my trembling light, sat a single item, a blue plastic key card, the kind hotels use for room access. It was pristine, unblemished. Unlike the Grand Meridian's decaying interiors, this card looked brand new. On its face, stamped in crisp white letters, "For Housekeeping." I shouldn't have picked it up, but I did. It was warm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The elevator buttons were covered in grime, but one was cleaner than the others. The cover over the 13 button had been torn off. Beneath it, the button glowed a sickly green. My finger hovered over it. The key card throbbed in my palm. They're not empty. I pressed the button. The elevator lurched upward with a sound like bones snapping. The cables screamed. Dust rained from the ceiling. The indicator dial spun wildly. 12, 13, and stopped. The doors shuddered open. Floor 13 wasn't burned. It was preserved. Moonlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a hallway frozen in 1973. Plush, crimson carpet, gilt-framed paintings of stormy seas, crystal sconces coated in a fine layer of ash, but intact, and the smell, not mildew, not smoke, but lavender and beeswax, like a room kept immaculate for guests who never arrived. Every door stood open. Every room held a single armchair, facing the window. They weren't fancy chairs, just sturdy wooden frames with faded floral upholstery, but they were occupied, not by people, by presence. The air above each chair shimmered like heat haze off asphalt, and in that shimmer, shapes coalesced, a woman's hand resting on the armrest, a man's shoulder hunched against the cold, a child's knee drawn up to their chest, translucent, flickering, waiting. I stepped into room 101. My boots sank into the thick carpet. The chair faced a window overlooking the city skyline, now choked with fog. On the seat, cushion lay a pair of spectacles, one lens cracked. On the floor beside it, a woman's pearl earring. I bent to pick it up. The whisper hit me like a physical blow. "Don't turn around." The voice was dry, papery, layered with a crackle of old flames. It came from the chair, from the space where a head would rest. I froze. My hand hovered over the earring. "They watch through the glass." The whisper continued. "They wait for someone to sit, to take the place of the one who left, to fill the emptiness." Who left? My voice was a croak. The fireman. He pulled me out. But not the others, not my Edward, not little Clara. He saved me, and I watched them burn from the street. I couldn't bear it. So I came back. I sat in the chair, and they let me stay. A pause. The shimmer above the chair deepened, darkening. But the chair must be filled, always. I backed out of the room, down the hall. Every chair faced the window. Every shimmer held a shape. A man in a tuxedo, his face half melted. A child clutching a charred teddy bear. A woman in a flapper dress, her hair floating as if underwater. They didn't look at me. They looked through me, out the windows, at the city that had forgotten them. Room 1313 stood at the end of the hall. Its door was slightly ajar. Moonlight bled through the crack, painting a silver stripe on the carpet. I pushed it open. The room was identical to the others. Same floral wallpaper, same brass bed frame, same armchair facing the window. But this chair was different. It was empty, truly empty. No shimmer, no presence, just dust motes dancing in the moonlight. And on the seat cushion, a single item, a firefighter's helmet, blackened, scorched. The number, Fort 17, stenciled on the brim. I knew that number. My father had been firefighter Chapel 17. He'd died pulling survivors from the Grand Meridian blaze. He'd saved 12 people, not 17. He'd carried out a woman in a lavender dress, Mildred Calloway, the newspapers later said, but left behind her husband and daughter when the stairwell collapsed. He'd never forgiven himself. He'd drowned the guilt in whiskey for 20 years until his liver gave out. I'd been 12 when they lowered his casket into the ground. The only thing I kept was his old helmet, stored in a box under my bed. The key card in my pocket burned cold. They want you to sit. I backed out of room 1313, slamming the door shut. The elevator wouldn't come. The button refused to light. I took the emergency stairs. the metal steps groaning under my weight. Halfway down, I heard it, a sound that stopped me dead. Scrape. A chair dragging across carpet. Scrape! Closer now. From the 14th floor landing, I ran. Down to 12. Down to 11. Burst into the lobby at 5:48 a.m., gasping, covered in dust and sweat. The caretaker stood by the front desk, polishing a brass bell with a rag. He didn't look up. "You went up," he said. Flat. Certain. I couldn't speak. Just nodded. He sighed, the sound like wind through tombstones. "They always do, the ones with ghosts of their own." He set down the bell. "Your father was a good man, braver than he knew. He saved Mildred Calloway, but he carried Edward and Clara with him until the end. The chairs, they don't just hold the dead, they hold the living who can't let go." "How do you know about my father?" He finally met my eyes. His pupils were black pits. "I was Edward Calloway, Mildred's husband. The fire took my body, the guilt took hers. She sat in that chair for 30 years until you came. Your grief, it's a beacon. They smell it on you like blood and water." He tapped the desk ledger. "Sign out, take your money, but know this. The chair in 1313 isn't empty anymore. It's waiting for you to come home." I signed, took the cash, drove straight to the Greyhound station, bought a ticket to Phoenix, slept in my seat for 3 days, jumping at every whisper of brakes, every flicker of passing headlights on the bus window. I found a job washing dishes in a diner, rented a tiny apartment above a laundromat. No mirrors, no chairs facing windows. I covered the windows with blackout curtains, slept with the lights on. For 6 months, it worked. Then the headache started, a dull throb behind my left eye, the smell of smoke in my coffee, the sound of scraping wood in the dead of night. I'd wake to find my apartment freezing, my breath fogging the air, and on the floor beside my bed, a single pearl earring. Last Tuesday I found a chair, not in my apartment, in the alley behind the diner, an old wooden armchair, its floral upholstery faded to gray. Facing the brick wall, I kicked it over, screaming at the night sky. The next morning, it was back, upright, waiting. I quit my job, packed a duffel bag, drove until the desert gave way to mountains. Checked into a roadside motel in Idaho. Room 8. No view, just a blank wall. I wedged a chair under the doorknob, piled dresser drawers against the window. At 3:13 a.m., I woke to the smell of lavender. The room was cold. Moonlight streamed through the window I'd barricaded, and there, in the center of the room, sat the chair. Not the motel's flimsy plastic one. The armchair from room 1313, its wood gleamed in the moonlight. On the seat cushion lay my father's helmet. Scorched. Number 413, clear, in the soot. The scraping started. Not from the chair, from inside. My skull. Scrape, 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 like wood on bone. I covered my ears, sang nursery rhymes, recited grocery lists. Nothing drowned it out. The scraping grew louder, sharper, until it wasn't scraping anymore. It was tapping. Fingernails on glass, from the window. I turned. My father stood on the other side of the glass, not as I remembered him, young, strong, smelling of soap and sawdust. This was the man from his funeral photos. Gaunt, hollow-eyed, his uniform soaked in phantom sweat and soot. He pressed a palm against the window pane. His mouth moved. No sound came through the glass, but I knew the words. He'd whispered them to me the night before he died, drunk on cheap bourbon. I should have gone back for them. Behind him, in the motel parking lot, stood others, Mildred Calloway in her lavender dress, Edward, his face smooth and unmarked, little Clara, clutching her teddy bear, all facing my window, all waiting. The tapping stopped. My father's hand slid down the glass, pointing not at me, at the chair. Scrape. The chair moved, just an inch, toward the window. I knew then I couldn't run. Not from this. The grief I carried, the guilt over not visiting his grave, not keeping his promises, not being the son he wanted, it wasn't just mine, it was theirs. A debt passed down, a vacancy that needed filling. I stood up, my legs shook, the room tilted. I walked to the chair. The wood was warm. The floral pattern felt familiar under my fingers, like the armchair in our old living room, the one he'd fallen asleep in, watching football games. I sat down. The scraping stopped. The cold lifted. The smell of lavender faded, replaced by wood smoke and damp earth. Moonlight warmed my face. Outside the window, my father smiled. Not the broken smile of his last years, the smile from my childhood photos, the one that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He raised a hand. Not in farewell, in thanks. Mildred took his arm. Edward lifted Clara onto his shoulders. They turned away from the window, walking toward the mountains, their forms dissolving into the morning mist like smoke. The room grew quiet, peaceful. I closed my eyes. The last thing I felt was the chair rocking gently beneath me, not from the wind, from something breathing in the space behind me, something that had waited 40 years for this moment, something that would keep waiting. When the motel maid found a room at noon, the chair was empty, facing the window. The blackout curtains were drawn back. Sunlight streamed across the worn carpet. On the seat cushion lay a firefighter's helmet, blackened but clean, and beside it a single pearl earring. The ledger at the front desk showed no record of my stay, but on the 13th floor of the Grand Meridian Hotel in room 1313, the caretaker placed a fresh key card on the desk. It glowed faintly in the gloom, on its face stamped in crisp white letters. Thirtumofti. He carried it up the service elevator, past the covered button, to the silent floor where every window held a view of a city that had moved on. He placed the card on the armchair in room 13 Moronin, a chair that hadn't been there yesterday. It faced the window, waiting. With that, the story is over. Let's move to the next story. Housekeeping logs listed guests who never checked in but ordered daily room service. I took the job at the Bellwether because the alternative was sleeping under the Morrison Bridge with the other ghosts of Portland's homeless. Not literal ghosts, though after Bellwether I wasn't so sure. Just ghosts of people. The kind with hollow eyes and cardboard signs that said anything helps. My savings vanished. When the tech startup, I'd bet my 20s on folded overnight. My apartment followed when rent swallowed my severance. The Craigslist ad was a fluke. Posted at 3 a.m., no photos, just a phone number and a promise. Housekeeping supervisor, 25 al-Qarar cash, immediate start, must ignore anomalies. The voice on the other end was female, brittle, speaking through the static of a dying landline. Be here by 6 a.m., bring your own gloves, and for God's sake, don't read the logs. The Bellwether Hotel wasn't on any map, nestled in a forgotten alley behind Chinatown's rotten pagodas. It was a 1920s Art Deco corpse draped in ivy and pigeon filth. Its lobby doors were chained shut, the glass panes fogged with decades of grime. I knocked on a service entrance marked Staff Only Biosolids Removal. A woman opened it, late 60s, hair dyed an unnatural violet, uniform stiff with starch despite the frayed cuffs. Her name tag read Doris Rooms. She didn't smile. "You're late. Logs are in the cart, sheets in the bin, vacuum's broken, and don't touch the silver tray on room 13's cart." She shoved a rusted janitor's cart at me, its wheels shrieking like tortured cats. "Start with floors 4 through 6. Skip 13. Always skip 13. The cart held a battered clipboard. The bellwether housekeeping log ledger, leather-bound, water-stained, filled with cramped handwriting and fading blue ink. Room numbers, dates, standard stuff, until I flipped to last week. Room 1301, March 12th. Guest, Mr. Alastair Finch, checked in. Never room service order, 2 eggs over easy, black coffee, wheat toast. Notes, tray left outside door at 8:03 a.m. Returned at 8:47 a.m. Plate empty. Coffee cup refilled with rainwater. Room 1307, March 13th. Guest, Miss Eleanor Voss. Checked in. Never room service order, chicken broth, saltines, glass of warm milk. Notes, tray untouched. Broth congealed, milk curdled, saltines arranged in a circle around the bowl. Eleanor Voss. From Camp Everstill. The name hit me like a fist. I'd read her journal entry about the hole in the woods, about Sarah Miller. How was she here? In a hotel log? Doris appeared beside me, materializing from the shadows of a hallway. "I told you not to read them." Her voice was flat. "Those guests aren't ours. They're tenants, and tenants pay their dues." She tapped the log with a bony finger. "Room service isn't for eating. It's for remembering." "What does that mean?" She turned away, pushing her own cart down the hall. "The bellwether doesn't forget. It collects, like a spider's web. Grief, regret. The things people leave behind when they die alone in cheap motel rooms. The stillness is hungry, and room service feeds it." She paused at a door marked "Staff Only." "Your cart's got a full shift, and the silver tray on 13's cart, that's not for you. That's for her." Room 13's cart sat at the end of the 4th floor hallway. On it rested a tarnished silver tray, covered by a frayed linen cloth. I lifted the cloth. No food, just a single teacup, cracked porcelain, stained brown at the rim. My mother's teacup, the one I'd smashed against the Ravenswood Grand's mirror months ago, the one I'd left in a dumpster behind a Greyhound station in Boise. It sat on the tray, filled to the brim with black liquid that smelled of lake water and wet roses. I dropped the cloth, backed away. My hand shook. This wasn't possible. This was my grief, my ghost, not some hotel's. Doris found me slumped against the wall. She didn't ask why I was crying, just pressed a fresh logbook into my hands. "New shift, new rules. You clean the rooms. You log what you see. You don't question the orders, and you never look in the mirrors after midnight." She pointed to a streak of grime on the wall. "That's not dirt. It's residue from when guests try to claw their way out of the glass." I worked in silence. Floors 4 through 6 were tombs. Dust lay thick as snow on velvet drapes and clawfoot tubs. In room 412, I found a suitcase under the bed, packed with 1940s women's clothes, a floral dress, stockings, a pearl necklace. The log entry for that room read, "Room 4012, March 14th. Guest, Mrs. Evelyn Shaw checked in. Never room service order. Gin martini, extra dry, bowl of olives. Notes, olives replaced with lake stones. Gin bottle filled with black water. Martini glass left on windowsill facing the alley. The stones were smooth, river polished. One had a scratch in the shape of a child's handprint. I pocketed it. A mistake. That night, I couldn't sleep in the staff quarters, a windowless basement room smelling of bleach and despair. At 2:17 a.m., the intercom crackled to life. Not Doris's voice, a child's, gurgling, wet. "Room service for room 1313, please." The logbook lay open on my cot. I flipped to today's date. Blank. I grabbed a pen. My hand moved on its own. Room 1313, March 15. Guest, Sarah Miller. Checked in, never room service order. Grilled cheese sandwich, chocolate milk, apple slices. Notes, I stopped writing. Sarah Miller, the girl from the lake at Camp Everstill. The one buried in the woods. The one who sang "Row, row, row your boat" from the dark water. I tore the page out, threw it in the trash. But when I turned back, the logbook was open again. The entry was there, complete. My handwriting. But the note section now read, "Plate licked clean. Chocolate milk poured into floorboards. Apple core placed on pillow. Guest requested the story about the boat, but housekeeper refused. Guest wept. Sound recorded. 37 seconds of sobbing. Transferred to archive. The intercom crackled again, louder, closer. You forgot the story. I ran to the service elevator. The button for 13 was uncovered, glowing faintly green. I pressed it. The doors slid open on darkness. The smell hit me first, roses, wet earth, the metallic tang of deep water, and beneath it, the sweet rot of forgotten fruit. Floor 13 wasn't sealed. It was waiting. The hallway stretched into impossible darkness, lit only by sconces dripping black wax. Every door stood ajar. From within came the clink of cutlery, the murmur of voices, the sigh of a bed settling under unseen weight. I followed the sound of a child humming. Stopped at room 1313. The door was open. Inside, moonlight streamed through a window overlooking a void, not the city, but an endless black lake. On the bed sat Sarah Miller, not bloated, not blue, just a girl in a yellow sundress, her hair damp, her feet dangling above the floor. On the nightstand sat the silver tray, empty plates, a glass of chocolate milk, half drunk, an apple core on the pillow. She looked up. Her eyes were the color of lake silt. "You didn't bring the story?" "I don't know any stories," I whispered. "You do." She patted the space beside her on the bed. "The one about the boat. The one that doesn't sink. I can't stay. Everyone stays." She pointed to the corner. A chair sat facing the window. In it sat a figure. A woman in a floral dress, her back turned, her shoulders shaken with silent sobs. Eleanor Voss. From the journal. From the hole. She forgot her story, so the lake took it. Now she waits for someone to remember for her. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. The bellwether collects stories, the sad ones, the ones that end in rain. A key turned in the lock. Doris stood in the doorway, her violet hair a halo in the gloom. She didn't seem surprised. "Time to go, dear. Staff curfew?" She nodded at Sarah. "Guest 1313, your tray will be refreshed at dawn with the story." Sarah smiled, a smile too wide for her face. "Tomorrow. I'll wait." Back in the basement, Doris made tea on a hot plate. Not in mugs, in hotel room service cups. "You saw her," she said, not looking at me. "Sarah Miller, drowned in Blackwater Lake, 1987. Her mother threw herself in after. The lake couldn't keep them both. So the bellwether took the grief, took the need to be remembered." She slid a cup toward me. The liquid was black. Smelled of roses. "This hotel isn't haunted by the dead. It's haunted by the unfinished. The apologies never spoken. The goodbyes never said. The Stories never told. Room service is how we feed them, how we keep the stillness from spilling out into the world. "Why me?" I asked, my voice raw. She finally met my eyes. Hers were the color of old bruises. "Because you carry a story. Your mother's. The one you never finished telling her before the cancer took her voice. You left it in that teacup you broke. The bellwether found it, like it finds all lost things." She tapped the logbook on the table. "They're not guests, they're vacancies, and vacancies must be filled." I didn't sleep. At dawn, I found the archive. It wasn't a room. It was a closet behind a boiler, shelves lined with cassette tapes labeled in the same blue ink as the logs. Eleanor Voss, Hole in the Woods, Alistair Finch, Rainwater Coffee, Mildred Calloway, The Chair on 13, and one labeled Alice, Mother's Teacup. My name, my pain. I played it. My own voice, shaky with tears. And I never told her I forgave her for leaving me with Dad. I never said I understood why she stayed with him after he hit her. I just stopped visiting. After the hospice called, I was too ashamed to go. The last thing I saw was that stupid teacup on her nightstand, the one with the chip on the handle. I threw it against the wall when I got home, shards everywhere, like us. The tape ended with static, then a child's whisper, "She wants you to sit to finish the story." I quit that day, packed my duffel. Doris didn't try to stop me, just handed me an envelope stuffed with cash. "The stillness follows you," she said, her hand brushing mine. Her skin was cold. "It always finds the unfinished." I drove east, stopped in a Nebraska town called Willow Creek, rented a studio above a hardware store. No hotel logos on the towels, no room service menus under the door. I bought new dishes, threw out the rock with the child's handprint, buried it in the backyard. For 3 weeks it worked. Then the teacup appeared, not on a silver tray, on my kitchen counter. My mother's cracked porcelain cup, filled with black water that smelled of roses. The logbook sat beside it, open to a fresh page. My handwriting, Room 13A, March 29. Guest, Alice, mother's daughter. Checked in, never room service order, nothing. Notes, guest refuses to sit, refuses to remember. Tray left outside door, returned untouched. Cup refilled with lake water. Guest's shadow seen in window at 3 a.m., facing the alley. I threw the cup against the wall. It shattered. I swept the pieces into the trash. The next morning, it was whole again. On the counter, full. The logbook entry had changed. Notes, guest broke vessel. Vessel repaired. Guest's shadow now sits in the chair, facing the window, waiting for the story. I packed the car that night, headed for the coast, stopped at a motel in Santa Cruz, neon signs, salty air, the roar of the Pacific. Room 7, ocean view. I covered the bathroom mirror with a towel, pushed the single armchair into the closet. At 3:13 a.m., I woke to the smell of roses. The room was freezing. Moonlight bled through the window, and in the center of the room, facing the ocean, sat the chair. Not the motel's plastic one, the armchair from room 1313 at the Bellwether, floral upholstery frayed at the edges. On the seat cushion lay the teacup, full. The ocean's roar faded. In its place, the gentle lap of black water against the shore. Sarah Miller stood in the corner, dripping lake water onto the carpet. "She's waiting," she said. Her voice echoed with the sound of children singing underwater. "The story won't end until you tell it." Behind her, the window wasn't glass anymore. It was the surface of Blackwater Lake, and beneath it Sitting on the silt-covered floor in a circle of bones were the faces from the logs: Eleanor Voss, Alistair Finch, Mildred Calloway, all facing upward, all holding teacups filled with dark water, all watching me. Sarah pointed to the chair. "Sit, finish the story, then you can rest." I walked to the chair. The wood was warm. The floral pattern felt familiar, like the armchair in my mother's living room, the one she died in. I sat down. The scraping stopped. The cold lifted. The smell of roses faded, replaced by antiseptic and the faint scent of my mother's lavender hand cream. Moonlight warmed my face. Outside the window, the lake water cleared. My mother floated there, not bloated or broken, but as I remembered her before the sickness, soft eyes, gentle smile. She pressed a palm against the glass. Her mouth moved. No sound came through, but I knew the words. She'd whispered them to me the last time I saw her conscious. "I'm sorry I wasn't stronger." Behind her, in the dark water, the others watched, not with hunger, with patience, waiting for their own stories to be told. The teacup on my lap filled itself, not with lake water, with hot, steaming Earl Grey, the way she used to make it. I lifted it to my lips. The warmth spread through my chest. The words came then, unbidden, as smooth as the tea. "It's not your fault, Mom. I know you tried. I forgive you. I forgive me. I should have been there. I should have held your hand." Tears streamed down my face, hot and cleansing. "I love you. I always did." The cup emptied itself. My mother's reflection smiled. Not the broken smile of hospice, the smile from my childhood photos, the one that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She raised a hand, not in farewell, in peace. Sarah Miller took my hand. Her skin was cool but not clammy. "Good," she whispered. "Now you remember. Now you can stay." She led me to the window. The glass rippled like water. I stepped through. The lake was warm, silent. The others made room in their circle. Mildred Calloway patted the silt beside her. Alistair Finch offered me a teacup filled with starlight. Eleanor Voss hummed a tune I almost recognized. Above us, the surface shimmered. Through it, I saw the motel room. The chair sat empty, facing the window. The teacup on the cushion was gone. In its place lay the logbook, open. The final entry read, "Room 13, March 23. Guest, Alice, mother's daughter, checked in, forever. Room service order, peace. Notes, story completed. Guest seated. Vacancy filled. Downstairs, the motel clerk checked the ledger. No record of room 7 ever being occupied. But at the Bellwether Hotel, Doris placed a fresh logbook on the cart for floor 13. She wrote one entry, Room 1314, March 24. Guest, the clerk from Santa Cruz, checked in. Never room service order. Coffee, black. Notes, tray left, outside door. Returned empty. Cup refilled with rainwater. She covered the cart with a linen cloth. On top, she placed a single item, a motel room key card, still warm from a human hand. The elevator chimed. Doris pressed the button for 13. The doors closed. The stillness waited. That's where this story ends. Let's continue with the next, the last room at Hollowbrook Sanatorium. I never thought I'd end up living in a place like Hollowbrook. But when your bank account's bleeding red and your car is held together by duct tape and prayer, you stop asking questions about the why of a $250 a month room in a building that hasn't seen electricity since the Clinton administration. The listing was vague, just a grainy photo of a crumbling brick facade, ivy strangling the windows like green veins, and a single line: private room available. Utilities not included, no questions asked. I should have asked questions, but rent was due. My couch surfing grace period with my cousin had expired after 3 awkward weeks, and the only other option was sleeping in my rust bucket Corolla parked behind a 24-hour laundromat. So I called the number. A man answered on the 3rd ring, voice dry as dead leaves scraping concrete. He didn't give his name, just said, "Be here by sundown, bring cash, and don't go." Past the 3rd floor, Hollowbrook Sanatorium loomed over the edge of Blackwater County like a rotten tooth. Built in 1898 as a rest home for nervous disorders, it later became infamous for its experimental electroconvulsive therapies and ice baths for hysterical women. By the 1970s, lawsuits piled up like corpses in the basement morgue, and the state shut it down after a patient set fire to Ward C during a restraint session. 16 people died. The building was never fully demolished. Too expensive, they said. Too haunted, whispered everyone else. My room was on the 2nd floor, tucked into what used to be the nurses' quarters. Small, yes, but surprisingly intact. One window with cracked glass, a rusted radiator under it, a narrow bed with a stained mattress, and a door that locked from the inside. The landlord, a gaunt man named Silas, I learned later, handed me a rusted key and a kerosene lantern. "Generators out back," he muttered, pointing toward a shed choked with weeds. "Fills up once a week. Don't waste it." Then he left without another word, his boots crunching on broken glass as he vanished into the dusk. The first night was quiet. Too quiet. No traffic hum, no neighbor's TV bleeding through walls, not even crickets. Just the groan of old timber settling, the occasional skitter of something small in the walls. I lit the lantern, unpacked my duffel bag, and tried to ignore the smell. Damp plaster, mildew, and something faintly metallic, like old blood soaked into floorboards. I slept fitfully, dreaming of white-coated figures dragging a gurney down a hallway lined with barred doors. It started on the 2nd night. I was reading by lantern light, a cheap paperback thriller I'd picked up at a gas station, when I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping. Not from outside, from above, directly overhead. Tap, 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 like fingernails on wood. I froze, book half open in my lap. The sound stopped. I waited. Nothing. Probably just a raccoon in the attic, I told myself, or wind rattling loose shingles. Then came the whispering. Not words, not quite. More like breath, shaped into syllables, too low to decipher, drifting down through the ceiling vents. It sounded wet, labored, as if whoever or whatever was speaking had fluid in their lungs. I turned off the lantern, plunged the room into darkness, and pressed my ear to the floor. The whispering grew clearer, layered now. Multiple voices overlapping, some pleading, some laughing, one sobbing in short, ragged gasps. Not real, not real. Let me out, please. They're watching. I jerked back, heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't right. This wasn't just an old building settling. This felt intentional, like the voices knew I was listening. I didn't sleep that night. Sat hunched on the bed with my back against the wall, lantern burning low, jumping at every creak. Wake, dawn, exhaustion, 1. I woke to gray light filtering through the grimy window and the distant cry of a crow. The whispers were gone. Daylight made everything feel foolish. I laughed at myself while boiling water on a camping stove for instant coffee. Old buildings make noises. Rats, birds, structural decay. It all sounds sinister in the dark. I explored the second floor that morning, careful to avoid the stairs to the third floor like Silas warned. Most rooms were stripped bare or filled with debris. Collapsed ceilings, shattered furniture, peeling wallpaper hanging like flayed skin. One room still had a rusted gurney tipped on its side, restraints dangling from the frame. I didn't linger, but that night the tapping returned, louder, insistent, and this time it wasn't just above me, it came from the walls, from inside the closet, from under the bed. A syncopated rhythm, almost musical, like someone, or many someones, were drumming their fingers in unison. Then the scratching started, long, slow drags across the floorboards outside my door, pausing, dragging again, closer. I held my breath, eyes fixed on the door handle. It didn't turn, but the scratching stopped right outside. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then a soft, wet, sniffing sound, like a dog catching a scent. I didn't move, didn't blink. Minutes crawled by. Finally, the dragging resumed, fading down the hallway toward the stairwell. I waited until sunrise before opening the door. The hallway was empty, dust undisturbed except for my own footprints from the day before. No claw marks, no strange residue, just silence and decay. But I found something else. Taped to the inside of my door, hidden behind the peeling paint near the hinge, was a yellowed piece of paper, handwritten in faded blue ink. Room 317 is not empty. Do not go there. They are waiting. My blood went cold. Room 317, third floor. Silas's warning echoed in my head. Don't go past the third floor. Not don't go to the third floor. Past it, as if the third floor itself was the boundary. That afternoon, I confronted Silas. He was tinkering with the generator in the shed, oil smudged on his cheekbones. When I showed him the note, his face didn't change. Just wiped his hands on his overalls and said, "Found that, did you?" "What's in room 317?" I demanded, voice shaking. He looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time. His eyes were pale, almost colorless, like river stones. "Nothing that concerns you," he said. "Stay in your room. Keep your door locked after dark. And whatever you hear, don't answer." He walked away before I could ask more. That night, I barricaded the door with the rickety dresser. Useless, probably, but it made me feel less like prey. The whispers returned louder now, weaving through the walls like smoke. They weren't just random phrases anymore. They were calling my name. "Alice, Alice, open the door. We know you're there." How did they know my name? I hadn't told Silas, hadn't written it anywhere. Panic clawed up my throat. I stuffed my ears with wadded-up socks, curled into a ball on the bed, and prayed for dawn. But the worst came at 3:17 a.m. I know because I'd been staring at my phone, watching the minutes crawl by. The lantern flickered violently, though there was no draft. The temperature plummeted. I could see my breath fogging in the air, and then clear as if spoken right beside my ear. "We're coming up." Footsteps, heavy dragging footsteps on the stairs outside, slow, deliberate, stopping on the second floor landing. Then one by one they approached my door, not scratching this time, knocking, 3 sharp raps, silence, then 3 more. I didn't breathe, didn't move. The knocking stopped, but the presence remained. I could feel it, a pressure against the door. like something leaning its weight against the wood, testing the barricade. The doorknob rattled. Once, twice. Then a new sound, a low, guttural moan so full of despair it made my bones ache. It wasn't human, not entirely. It held too much pain, too much hunger, too much wrongness. It lasted for hours, or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning in that frozen dark. When the first gray light touched the window, the presence receded. The cold lifted. The moaning faded into the walls. I couldn't stay. I packed my bag with trembling hands, threw everything in my car, and drove until the gas gauge hit E. I didn't look back. But here's the thing, they don't tell you about places like Hollowbrook. You can leave the building, but it doesn't leave you. 3 nights ago, I woke to the smell of mildew and old blood. My apartment was freezing. On my bedroom wall, scrawled in something dark and flaking like dried rust, were 3 numbers, 317. And last night, as I lay awake listening to the silence of my safe, modern apartment, I heard it again. Faint at first, then clearer. Tap, 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 tap. From inside my closet. They're not in room 317 anymore. They followed me home. And they're waiting. That's where this story ends. Let's continue with the next. All hallway mirrors reflected the same guest, even in sealed rooms. I took the job at the seal box because the eviction notice was taped to my apartment door, and the only thing left in my bank account was $3.78. The Craigslist ad was sparse. Night clerk, Sealbach Hotel, $300 cash, week, must start tonight. Bring own flashlight. No photos, no address beyond downtown Nashville, alley behind the old Opera House. I found it at 11 p.m., a hulking Beaux-Arts relic from 1912, its grand entrance boarded up with plywood stamped, condemned, structural failure. The side door, marked Staff Entrance, Hazmat Only, creaked open before I could knock. Lester stood there, late 70s, spine curved like a question mark, uniform 2 sizes too big. His eyes were the color of dried blood, fixed on a point just over my shoulder. He didn't offer a handshake, just thrust a brass key into my palm. Shifts midnight to 6. Front desk only, no housekeeping, no room service. You answer the phone if it rings, which it won't. You log arrivals, which there won't be. And you never look directly at the mirrors. What mirrors? I asked, shivering in the unheated hallway. All of them. He shuffled past me into the gloom, gesturing with a gnarled finger. Hallways, elevators, even the sealed rooms, they all show the same guest, the one who never checks out. He stopped at the front desk, a cavernous marble counter coated in dust. Behind it sat a ledger book bound in cracked leather. Sign in. Your name's already there. I flipped open the ledger. Every page was filled with identical entries in different handwritings, all in fading blue ink. Guest, Daniel Finch. Checked in. Never. Room, 713. Notes, mirror reflection active, sealed room confirmed, do not acknowledge. My name, Jamie Russo, was scrawled at the bottom in fresh ink. Beneath it, a new line formed as I watched. Shift start, 12:01 a.m. Lester's breath hitched. You saw it write itself, didn't you? He didn't wait for an answer. Daniel Finch, drowned in the Cumberland River, 1958, age 7. His mother jumped in after him. The river couldn't keep them both. The Sealbach took what was left. He tapped the ledger. This hotel doesn't forget. It collects. Grief. Guilt. The things people bury so deep, they forget they're carrying them. The mirrors. They're not glass. They're doors. And Daniel's been waiting behind them for someone to remember him. He vanished into a service elevator before I could ask more. The doors groaned shut, sealing him in the darkness. Midnight. The lobby lights dimmed automatically, plunging the space into gloom broken only by emergency exit signs. I sat at the front desk, the ledger open before me. Dust motes danced in the weak green light. And then I saw the first mirror, mounted above the concierge desk, floor-to-ceiling tarnished silver frame. It reflected the empty lobby perfectly, except for one detail. In the glass, standing near the grand staircase, was a boy, 7 years old, dripping wet, hair plastered to his forehead, a faded blue baseball cap. He held a waterlogged teddy bear. His eyes were open, wide, unblinking. Staring directly at my reflection, I spun around. The lobby was empty. I turned back to the mirror. The boy was gone. Only my own pale, hollow-eyed face stared back. I told myself it was stress, sleep deprivation, the flickering light. But when I checked the ledger again, a new note had appeared beneath my name. Mirror sighting number 1. Guest acknowledged. 1:17 a.m. I patrolled the second-floor hallway to stay awake. Every 20 feet, a mirror hung on a wall. Each one reflected the same scene: the decaying hallway, peeling wallpaper, shattered light fixtures. But in every mirror, the boy stood in a different spot, leaning against a doorframe, sitting on the floor, drawing with invisible crayons. Standing behind me, close, enough to touch my shoulder. I kept my eyes down, focused on the carpet, a threadbare crimson pattern slick with something dark and damp. Room 214's door was boarded shut with plywood stamped, "Hazardous materials, do not enter." Yet, in the mirror opposite it, I saw the room's interior, intact. Moonlight streaming through a window, and in the center of the room, on a narrow bed, sat the boy, Daniel Finch. He rocked slowly, hugging the teddy bear. His lips moved. No sound came through the glass, but I knew the words from the Aurora Grand's key cards, from Camp Everstill's journal. He promised he'd read to me. I backed away, heart hammering. The mirror on the next landing showed him standing now, pointing at me, not with his finger, with the teddy bear's paw. 3:03 a.m. The phone rang. I jumped. The sound was deafening in the silence. I grabbed the receiver. Sealback Hotel. Static. Then a child's voice gurgling wet. "Room 713, cold, so cold." "I'm sorry, we're not—" "He forgot my story," Daniel whispered. "The one about the boat, the one that doesn't sink." The line went dead. I checked the ledger. A new entry formed. Guest request. Story denied. Thermal anomaly detected in room 713. Room 713 was on the 7th floor. The elevator was out of service, its brass cage hanging open over a shaft of utter blackness. I took the stairs. Each flight grew colder. By the 5th floor, my breath fogged in the air. The 7th floor hallway was pitch black. My flashlight beam cut through the gloom, illuminating dust hanging like cobwebs. Every mirror I passed showed Daniel, closer, closer. In the last mirror before room 713, he stood right behind my reflection, his small hand resting on my shoulder. Room 713's door was sealed with police tape and a steel plate bolted over the lock. Yet moonlight bled through the keyhole, and in the mirror across the hall, I saw the room clearly. Daniel sat on the bed, knees drawn to his chest. The window was open. Rain fell inside, pooling on the floorboards. He looked up, not at the window, at the mirror, at me. "Read to me," he mouthed. I ran. Back at the front desk, I packed my duffel. Screw the $300, screw Lester. I'd sleep in my car, anything but this. As I shouldered my bag, the lobby mirror caught my eye. Daniel stood alone in the reflection, not in the staircase, not behind me. In the mirror itself, stepping out of the glass like it was water, his bare feet made no sound on the marble floor. He carried the teddy bear. His baseball cap dripped dark water onto the ledger book. He opened it, turned to the page with my name, dipped a small finger into the puddle on the floor, wrote, Jamie Russo, room 703, vacancy filled. I slammed the ledger shut, grabbed my keys, flung open the front doors, and froze. The street outside wasn't Nashville. It was a forest at twilight, ancient oaks draped in Spanish moss. Still, black lake reflecting a moon that shouldn't exist. And on the shore, facing away from me, stood Daniel. He turned, water weeds tangled in his hair. His eyes were the color of river mud. In his hand, he held a silver key card stamped 7. Third stars. Almost time, he gurgled. I slammed the door shut, locked him, leaned against the wood, gasping. That's when I saw the note taped to the inside of the door. Neat, blocky handwriting on hotel stationery. They watch through the glass. They wait in the between. Covering the mirror traps them with you. Breaking it lets them out. The only way to leave is to let them in. Don't trust your reflection. It's not yours anymore. Eleanor Voss. From Camp Everstill. From the bellwether logs. How is this connected? My head spun. I remembered the hole in the woods. The bones wrapped in burlap. The journal entry about the warm floorboards. Were they all threads in the same rotten tapestry? The same hunger that lived in stillness? Lester found me sitting on the front desk, shaking. He didn't ask what I'd seen, just sighed, a sound like dry leaves crumbling. Eleanor tried to fight them, he rasped, tried to seal the mirrors. But glass isn't a wall, it's a doorway, and doorways have 2 sides. He crouched beside me, his breath sour with decay. You think you're the first to run? They always run, until they realize the only way out is through. Through what? Through the reflection. He tapped his chest. They take what you carry, the pain, the guilt, the things that make you heavy. They feed on it. And when you're empty, you stay, like Daniel, like all the others. He stood up, brushing dust from his knees. Finish your shift, or don't. It doesn't matter. The mirrors choose who stays. Dawn was hours away. I barricaded myself in the staff room, a closet-sized space behind the desk with a cot and a hot plate. No mirrors. I covered the single window with a blanket. Sat on the cot with my back to the door, listening to the silence. It wasn't quiet. It was waiting. At 4:47 a.m., the silence broke. A soft tap, tap, tap on the door, like fingernails. Go away, I whispered. The tapping stopped. Then a child's voice, muffled but clear. I brought you a story. I didn't move, didn't breathe. A piece of paper slid under the door. I picked it up with trembling hands. It was a crayon drawing. A stick-figure boy and a stick-figure man in a boat on a scribbled black lake. The words at the top, in wobbly letters, Daddy and Daniel, the boat that doesn't sink. Beneath it, in the same handwriting as the ledger, he promised he'd rid to me. He lied. Memories flooded me, memories I'd buried for 20 years. My father's boat on the Cumberland, me, age 7, begging him to take me fishing. His laugh. Next time, Jamie, promise. The next time never came. He left that night, left us, left Mom to drown in vodka and tears, while I learned to be the adult at 10 years old. I'd buried the anger, buried the promise he broke, buried the little boy who still waited on that dock. The doorknob rattled. I threw the drawing into the corner. "I'm not your daddy," I shouted. "I never promised you anything." Silence. Then slowly the door handle turned, not by a hand, by itself. The lock clicked open. I backed into the corner as the door swung inward. Daniel stood there, not dripping, not bloated, just a boy in a dry blue baseball cap holding the teddy bear. His eyes were clear, sad. "You carry him," he whispered. "The boy on the dock, the one who waits, he's cold, like me." He pointed to my chest. "The stillness feels him. It's hungry." I sank to my knees. Tears streamed down my face. "I couldn't save her," I choked out. The words came unbidden, raw. "My mom, after he left, she walked into the river one winter. I was 12. I should have stopped her. I should have been stronger." Daniel nodded. "The river took her, but it couldn't keep her guilt. The stillness took it, like it took my daddy's broken promise." He held out the teddy bear. "Sit with me, in the chair, in room 713. The story won't end until you tell it." He led me through the empty lobby. The mirrors showed only us now. No distorted reflections, no shifting shadows. Just a broken man and a drowned boy walking hand in hand toward the stairs. Room 713's steel plate was gone. The door stood open. Inside, the room was intact. Moonlight streamed through the window, showing not Nashville, but the black expanse of the Cumberland River on a winter night. Ice crusted the edges. On the bed sat an armchair. Facing the window, my mother's favorite chair from our old house, the one she'd rocked me to sleep in before the vodka won. On the seat cushion lay a single item. My father's old fishing hat, stained with river water. Daniel climbed onto the chair, patted the space beside him. "He's waiting too," he said softly. "Your daddy, in the water. He carries the promise he broke." I sat down. The chair was warm. The floral upholstery felt like home. Outside the window, the river cleared. My mother floated there, not bloated, not broken, but as I remembered her before the sadness. Bright eyes, singing off-key to the radio. She pressed a palm against the glass. Her mouth moved. No sound came through, but I knew the words she'd whispered the night she left. "I'm sorry I wasn't stronger for you." Behind her, in the dark water, a figure emerged. My father, younger, sober, his face ravaged with regret. He held out a hand, not to me, to the boy on the dock, the 7-year-old me who still waited with a fishing rod and a heart full of hope. Daniel placed the teddy bear in my lap. It was warm, real. "Read the story," he whispered. I looked at the crayon drawing in my hand, the boat, the figures, the words, and I read, my voice steady, for the first time in decades. Once there was a boy named Daniel, and his daddy promised to take him fishing in a boat that didn't sink. But the river was hungry, and promises are heavy, so the stillness took them both, and now they wait for someone to remember, for someone to finish the story. The teddy bear emptied itself of river water. The fishing hat on the chair dried. My mother's reflection smiled, a real smile, crinkling the corners of her eyes. My father nodded. The little boy on the dock lowered his fishing rod. "Let it go." Daniel took my hand. His skin was no longer cold, just small, human. "Good," he whispered. "Now you remember. Now you can stay." He led me to the window. The glass rippled like water. I stepped through. The river was warm, silent. The others made room in their circle, my mother, my father, the boy from the dock. Sarah Miller floated nearby, humming, "Row, row, row your boat." Eleanor Voss sat on the silt, brushing her hair. Mildred Calloway held out a teacup filled with starlight. Above us, the surface shimmered. Through it, I saw the Seelbach lobby. The armchair in room 7113 sat empty, facing the window. The ledger book lay open on the front desk. The final entry read, "Jamie Russo, room 7113, story completed. Vacancy filled." Downstairs, the morning porter found the ledger. No record of a night clerk named Jamie Russo. But at the Obsidian Tower, the ancient elevator operator placed a fresh brass key on the service elevator floor. It was warm. At the Bellwether, Doris wrote a new log entry. Room 1314. Guest, the porter from Nashville. Order, hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. Notes, tray returned empty. Marshmallows replaced with river stones. And in the hallway of the Seelbach Hotel, every mirror, sealed rooms, boarded-up floors, the grand staircase, showed the same scene. A boy in a blue baseball cap, sitting in an armchair, facing the window, holding a teddy bear, waiting for the next story to begin. And with that, this story comes to an end. Let's move on to the next one. The hotel that forgot it was ever booked. I took the job because I was desperate, not the kind of desperate that makes you rob a convenience store or sell plasma twice a week. The quiet, suffocating kind that hollows you out until the only thing left is the need to disappear. My savings evaporated after the divorce. A slow bleed of lawyer fees and alimony payments that left me with a duffel bag of clothes and a '98 Honda Civic held together by zip ties and regret. When I saw the ad on the county job board pinned to the bulletin board of the 24-hour laundromat where I'd been sleeping in my car, it felt like a lifeline. Night manager needed. The Grand View Hotel. 50-night Pluzzo's room. No experience necessary. Bring cash for first week's deposit. No address. Just coordinates that led me down a 2-lane highway swallowed by pine forests until the GPS signal died and the road turned to gravel. The Grand View didn't grand. It loomed. A hulking 5-story brick relic from the 1920s, it stood alone on a ridge overlooking a valley choked with mist. Its windows were mostly dark, some boarded, others shattered like broken teeth. Ivy clawed up the facade, thick as pythons, strangling the fire escapes. The sign above the entrance, once electric, now rusted into jagged letters, read Grand V, as if the W had simply given up and fallen away. The parking lot was cracked asphalt, littered with dead leaves and the skeletal remains of a '70s pickup truck. No other cars, no lights, just the hotel breathing in the twilight, exhaling the smell of damp stone and something vaguely sweet, like forgotten fruit left to rot. The key waited under a loose brick by the service entrance. Heavy iron, cold in my hand. The door groaned open on unoiled hinges, releasing a wave of stale air that smelled of dust, mildew, and old cigarette smoke. Inside, the lobby was a time capsule of faded grandeur. A chandelier hung crookedly from the ceiling, half its crystals missing. Velvet, curtains, moth-eaten and gray with grime, framed boarded-up windows. The front desk was a slab of scarred mahogany, its surface littered with dead flies and a single brass bell. Behind it sat a ledger book, its leather cover cracked and brittle. I flipped it open. Blank pages, every single one. Not a single name, date, or room number. Not even a doodle in the margins. Just emptiness. A note lay tucked beneath the bell. Neat, handwritten block letters on yellowed hotel stationery. Night manager duties. 1. Answer the phone if it rings, it won't. 2. Check the lobby hourly. No one comes. 3. Sleep in room 413. 4. Do not enter. Room 217. 5. The bellhop is not real. Ignore him. Deposit $350 cash. Leave on desk. Key to 413 in top drawer. I counted out 7 crumpled 50s, every dollar I had left, and placed them on the desk. The drawer stuck, then yielded with a shower of wood splinters. Inside lay a tarnished key on a frayed red tassel. Room 413. The elevator was out of service, its brass cage door hanging open to reveal a shaft of utter blackness that smelled like a grave. I took the stairs. They spiraled upward in near total darkness, the single bare bulb overhead flickering weakly. Each step groaned under my weight. The carpet, once deep crimson, was threadbare and stained with dark, irregular patches that felt sticky under my shoes. The air grew colder the higher I climbed. By the 4th floor, my breath fogged in the dim light. Room 413 was at the end of a long, narrow hallway. The key turned stiffly in the lock. Inside, the room was small but functional. A narrow bed with a thin mattress. A sink stained brown with rust. A single window overlooking the misty valley. The wallpaper was peeling, revealing plaster beneath that looked strangely smooth, almost polished, like it had been touched too many times. The only light came from a dusty lamp on the nightstand. When I turned it on, the bulb buzzed angrily, but refused to glow. I shook it. It flickered once, then died. I sat on the edge of the bed, exhaustion hitting me like a physical blow. Outside, the wind rose, howling through the pines. It sounded like voices whispering just below comprehension. I closed my eyes. The phone rang. I jolted upright, heart hammering against my ribs. It came from the lobby desk, a sharp, insistent brrring that shattered the silence. The note said it wouldn't ring. My bare feet slapped against the cold hallway floor as I ran downstairs. The lobby was empty. The phone, a heavy black rotary model, was silent on the desk. I lifted the receiver. Dead air. Static. I slammed it down. Then I saw the bellhop. He stood near the boarded-up windows, just inside the shadow of a marble column. Tall, gaunt, dressed in a threadbare uniform that might have been blue once, but was now the color of dried blood. His cap was pulled low over his face. He held a brass key on a chain. "I'm checking in," he said. His voice was dry, papery, like pages turning in an old book. "The hotel's closed," I said, my own voice sounding thin and reedy. "No vacancies." He didn't move, didn't blink. "Room 217 is ready." The note. "Do not enter. Room 217. "That room isn't available." A slow smile stretched across his face, too wide, too many teeth. "It's always available for guests who remember." He took a step forward. His shoes made no sound on the dusty tile. "You forgot your name, didn't you?" I hadn't. I knew my name was Mark Reynolds. But suddenly, the word felt slippery. Was that really it? Or was it Michael? Martin? The certainty bled out of me like air from a punctured tire. I need to see the register," I stammered, backing toward the desk. The bellhop tilted his head, a bird studying a worm. "The book is empty, like all the rooms, like all the guests, like you." He took another silent step. "The Grandview remembers what it wants to remember, and it doesn't want to remember you." I fumbled for the brass bell on the desk and slammed my palm down on it. The clang was shockingly loud, echoing through the cavernous lobby. The bellhop flinched, his form shimmering like heat haze off asphalt. For a split second, his face wasn't human, a blur of shifting shadows, hollow eyes, a mouth full of splinters. Then he was gone, vanished. Only the lingering smell of wet wool and damp earth remained. I ran back to room 413, locking the door behind me. Leaning against it, gasping, I realized my hands were shaking, and my name, Mark Reynolds. It felt borrowed, temporary, like a library book overdue. The room was freezing. I turned on the faucet in the sink. Rusty water sputtered out, then ran clear and icy cold. I splashed it on my face. When I looked up, the mirror above the sink was fogged, not with steam, with words, scratched into the condensation as if written by an invisible finger. "Who are you?" I wiped the mirror, clean with my sleeve. My reflection stared back, pale face, dark circles under my eyes, hair plastered to my forehead. But the eyes, they looked wrong, dull, empty, like the eyes of a mannequin. I blinked. When I opened them, the reflection was gone, just the fogged glass. And beneath the fog, new words formed. "You don't belong here." I spent the next 3 hours pacing the tiny room, jumping at every creak of the old building. The wind died. An unnatural silence settled over the hotel, thick and heavy as burial shroud. Around 2 a.m., the phone rang again. Not the lobby phone, the one in my room. A small, cream-colored desk phone I hadn't noticed before, sitting on the nightstand. Its cord snaked into the wall, frayed and chewed at the edges. I didn't answer. It rang 7 times, then stopped. Silence, then tapping. Soft, insistent tapping on the window. I crept to the bed, peeling back the dusty curtain just enough to see out. The valley was swallowed in fog. Nothing moved. I was about to let the curtain fall when I saw it. A pale hand, pressed against the outside of the glass, fingers splayed, knuckles white. It slid slowly downward, leaving a trail of moisture on the pane. Then it was gone. I didn't sleep. I sat on the bed with my back against the headboard, clutching the rusted fire poker I'd found leaning in the corner. Dawn came gray and weak, filtering through the grimy window. The hotel seemed to breathe a sigh of relief as the first light touched the valley. The oppressive silence lifted, replaced by the distant cry of a hawk and the rustle of wind in the pines. I went downstairs. The lobby looked different in daylight, less sinister, more sad. Dust motes danced in the weak sunbeams piercing the boarded windows. I approached the front desk, determined to find answers. I flipped through the ledger again, still blank. Every page pristine, untouched, except on the very last page, tucked between the cover and the binding, was a photograph, a black and white group shot, faded almost to sepia. Dozens of people in 1940s attire, men in suits, women in floral dresses, children holding balloons, standing on the Grand View's front steps. Everyone was smiling, except one man in the back row, tall, gaunt, wearing a bellhop's uniform. His face was blurred, as if he'd moved at the moment the shutter clicked. And behind him, in the hotel's grand entranceway, stood a shadow that didn't belong. Tall, thin, with too many joints in its limbs, its head elongated and featureless. It wasn't cast by any person in the photo. It was just there, waiting. I turned the photo over, scrawled in faded pencil. Opening day, June 15th, 1942. The Grand View remembers only the guests it keeps. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around. The bellhop stood at the base of the grand staircase, polishing a brass key with a rag that looked like old skin. His uniform was immaculate now, gleaming, buttons, crisp cap. But his face, it was smooth, featureless, like a mannequin's. No eyes, no mouth, just blank, pale flesh. "The lobby needs checking," he said, his voice coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Hourly." "I saw the photo," I said, holding it up. My voice didn't shake. Not this time. "What happened to them? To the guests?" The blank face tilted. "They forgot. Or the hotel forgot them. Same thing." He took a silent step forward. "Room 217 is ready for you. It's been ready since you arrived, since you forgot who you were." "I haven't forgotten," I shouted, the words ringing hollow even to my own ears. "Who am I?" The question echoed in the sudden silence. Mark Reynolds? Or just the man who came here to disappear? "The grand view is hungry," the bellhop whispered. His form flickered, revealing glimpses of the shadow behind him from the photo, tall, jointed, hungry. "It feeds on memory, on names, on the things that make you you. The longer you stay, the less you are, until there's nothing left but an empty room, an empty book, an empty guest." He was inches away now. I could smell the damp earth on him, the scent of deep, undisturbed soil. His blank face hovered level with mine. "You left your deposit. You took the room. The contract is sealed. Room 217 is waiting." I raised the fire poker. "Stay back." He didn't flinch, didn't move, but his voice dropped to a guttural rasp, layered with other voices, children laughing, women weeping, men shouting in panic. "Resistance is forgetting. Forgetting is peace. Let go. Let the grand view remember for you." I swung the poker. It passed through his chest like smoke. There was no resistance, no impact, just a coldness that numbed my arm to the shoulder. The bellhop didn't vanish. He unraveled, his form dissolving into dust motes that swirled in the sunbeams, carrying with them whispers. "Sarah, Thomas, Eleanor, remember us." Then silence. I stood alone in the lobby, the fire poker heavy in my hand. The photograph was gone from my pocket. The ledger lay open on the desk. The pages were no longer blank. Names filled them, dozens, hundreds, scrawled in shaky handwriting, ink blurred by tears or rain. "Sarah Jenkins, room 217, June 12th, 1943. Thomas Finch, room 413, August 3rd, 1951. Eleanor Voss, cabin 7, July 15th, 1987. My breath caught. Eleanor Voss, from Camp Everstill. How did her name get here? I looked down at my own hands. The knuckles were scraped raw, but I didn't remember falling. My reflection in the dark window pane showed a man with hollow cheeks, eyes wide with a fear that felt borrowed, familiar, but not mine. I ran upstairs, not to room 419, to the second floor, to room 217. The hallway was darker here, the air thick, tasting of copper and old pennies. The carpet felt spongy underfoot, damp. Room 217's door was identical to all the others, peeling paint, tarnished brass number, but the keyhole was filled with dark, viscous fluid that dripped slowly onto the floorboards. It smelled like the lake at Camp Everstill, like the mud beneath Hollowbrook's floorboards, like places that remember too much. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. Then a child's voice muffled, singing softly. "Row, row, row your boat." Sarah Miller, from the camp, from the lake, from the hole in the woods. My hand reached for the doorknob before I could stop it. The metal was ice cold. I turned it. The room was empty. Not just vacant, absent. No bed, no furniture, no wallpaper, just bare water-stained plaster walls and floorboards slick with that same dark fluid. In the center of the room, a single chair sat facing the window. On the chair lay a folded piece of hotel stationery. I stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me. Locked. I picked up the paper. my handwriting, but I didn't remember writing it. They're not in the rooms. The rooms are in them. The grand view doesn't forget guests. It consumes them, makes them part of its memory, part of its hunger. Room 217 isn't a room, it's a mouth. The bellhop isn't a ghost, he's the tongue. I tried to leave. I packed my bag, but the road just circles back. The trees close in. The hotel breathes, and I forget why I was running. I forget my wife's face, my daughter's laugh, my name. It's all fading like ink in rain. They're in the walls now, singing, waiting. They want me to join the chorus, to forget the pain, to be still, to be quiet, to be remembered. By the grand view? Maybe it's better this way. No more running, no more remembering the things that broke me, just peace, in the stillness, in the forgetting. The singing stopped. The darkness in the corners of the room deepened. It wasn't shadow. It was substance. Thick, tar-like, oozing from the cracks in the plaster. It pooled on the floor, spreading toward my feet. Shapes moved within it, pale hands, tangled hair, wide, unblinking eyes. Sarah Miller's face surfaced in the blackness, bloated and blue-lipped, her mouth opening in a silent plea. The fluid touched my shoe, cold, hungry. Memories flooded back, not mine, but theirs. A car crash on a rain-slicked highway, a betrayal in a sunlit kitchen, a child's hand slipping beneath dark water, the shame of bankruptcy, the hollow ache of loneliness, all the pains the grand view had swallowed over decades, all the reasons its guests had wanted to forget. The bellhop's voice whispered from the spreading darkness, no longer papery, but deep, resonant, ancient. Let go. Be remembered. I looked at my hands. They were fading, not vanishing, blurring, like the man in the photograph. My reflection in the dark window was gone. Only the shape of the shadow remained. I picked up the brass key from the chair, room 217's key. It felt warm, alive. Outside, the wind died. The hotel held its breath. I placed the key on a chair, sat down, faced the window. The darkness rose around my ankles, cold and thick as grave soil. It didn't hurt. It felt like sinking into a warm bath after a long, hard life. The singing started again. Dozens of voices now. Children, adults, old men, young women, a chorus of the forgotten. Row, row, row your boat. My name slipped away. Mark Reynolds, Michael, Martin. None of it mattered. The pain of the divorce, the shame of failure, the weight of being me. It all dissolved in the warm, dark peace. Such sweet, silent peace. The last thing I saw before the darkness took my eyes was the window, not the misty valley beyond, but the reflection in the glass. My face was gone. In its place, smooth, featureless, waiting. And on the desk in the lobby, the ledger book lay open. A new entry appeared in neat, steady handwriting that hadn't been there before. Guest, room 217, October 27, 2023. Below it, the page remained blank, waiting for the next forgotten soul to fill it. The phone on the front desk rang once, sharp, insistent. No one answered. The grand view remembered, and in its memory, we were all finally at rest. With that, the story is over. Let's move to the next story. Fresh towels were found on beds in a wing with no water. Since 1987, I took the janitorial job at the Grand Regent because the methadone clinic wouldn't refill my prescription without proof of income, and the only thing standing between me and a cardboard box under the Burnside Bridge was a pair of rubber gloves and a bucket of bleach. The job posting was handwritten on a napkin tucked under the wiper blade of my rusted-out Corolla. Cleaner needed, Grand Regent Hotel, $150 cash day, no questions, no water, in East Wing. The address led me through downtown Portland's industrial graveyard, past shuttered meatpacking plants and auto shops with skeletons of half-dismantled Chevys, to a 1920s Beaux-Arts monstrosity wedged between a condemned grain silo and the Willamette River's oil-slicked shore. Its grand entrance was bricked up with cinder blocks stamped, "Condemned, Black Mold Infestation." The side door marked "Hazmat Crew Only, Respirators Required." Stood slightly ajar, exhaling air that smelled of wet stone and forgotten funerals. Silas met me in the lobby. Not the gaunt man from Hollowbrook Sanatorium, but someone worse. Same name. Same hollow eyes, the color of stagnant pond water. Different face. This Silas was younger, mid-40s maybe, but aged by something deeper than time. His uniform hung off him like a shroud, stained with dark patches that might have been grease or something thicker. He didn't offer his hand, just thrust a ring of keys into my palm, cold iron teeth biting into my skin, and a clipboard with a single sheet of paper. "East Wing only," he rasped, his voice raw as scraped cement. "Floors 2 through 6, all rooms sealed. Your job is dust, just dust. If you see wet towels on beds, log it. Don't touch them, don't smell them, don't look at them too long. And whatever you do, don't follow the dripping sound." He tapped the clipboard. "Sign here. Your name's already filled in." I looked down. My name, Maggie Hayes, was scrawled in shaky blue ink beside shift 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Beneath it, handwritten in the same ink but different handwriting, "East Wing Towel Log, March 18th, 42 towels observed. Source unknown. Water main severed 1987. Recommend spiritual remediation." Silas was already walking away, his boots silent on the marble floor. "Oh," he called without turning, "the showers in the staff room, they work. Use them. You'll want to be clean when you leave." He vanished through a door marked "Boiler Room, Authorized Personnel Only," leaving me alone in a lobby, drowning in dust and shadow. The East Wing's hallway stretched into darkness, sealed off from the rest of the hotel by a thick steel door bolted shut with a padlock the size of my fist. Silas's master key turned with a groan that echoed like a dying man's sigh. Beyond it, the air changed, colder, thicker, smelling of mildew and something faintly sweet, like rotting lilies. No lights. Worked. My headlamp beam cut through the gloom, illuminating peeling gold leaf wallpaper and carpet so thick with grime it felt like walking on grave soil. Every room door was sealed with crisscrossed yellow tape stamped, "Do not enter. Water damage. Structural hazard." I started on the second floor, room 201. Dust coated every surface like gray snow. I swept it into a pile, the broom scratching against the floorboards. The bed was stripped bare, mattress stained with dark, uneven patches. And there, neatly folded at the foot of the bed, a towel, pristine white terry cloth, fluffy, smelling faintly of lavender. Impossible. I checked the log sheet, scrawled in fresh ink, "Room 201, 1 towel, fabric, 100% cotton, scent, lavender." I left it, moved to 202, same dust, same stripped bed, same impossible towel, this one slightly damp. The log entry appeared as I stared. "Room 202, 1 towel, damp, scent, lavender and river water." By noon, I'd logged 28 towels, some dry, some dripping, one wrapped around a rusted bedpost like a serpent. The log filled itself in my handwriting, though I hadn't touched the pen. "Room 237, towel warm to the touch, steam rising, scent, Earl Grey tea and antiseptic." That's when I heard the dripping, not from the towels, from deeper in the wing, a slow, rhythmic plink, 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 echoing from the third-floor stairwell. Silas's warning screamed in my head, "Don't follow the dripping sound." But the sound, it wasn't just water, it was a pattern, like Morse code, like a heartbeat. I followed it. The third-floor hallway was darker. My headlamp flickered. The dripping grew louder, leading me to room 313. Its door wasn't sealed. The yellow tape hung in shreds, as if torn by frantic hands. Inside, the room was untouched by dust. Moonlight streamed through a window overlooking the Willamette, painting stripes across a perfectly made bed, and on the pillow, 3 folded towels, stacked like a wedding cake. The top one was damp. Dark water seeped from its edges, pooling on the pillowcase. The dripping came from the bathroom. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The bathroom door stood open. No mold, no rust. Just gleaming white tiles and a claw-foot tub filled not with water, but with thick, black fluid that smelled of roses and wet earth. In the center of the tub floated a single item, my mother's silver locket, the one I'd buried with her after the overdose, the one I'd pawned 10 years ago for my first hit of fentanyl. Water dripped from the faucet. Plink, plink, plink. Each drop hit the black fluid with a sound like a sigh. With each plink, the locket rose slightly. With each plink, my chest tightened. With each plink, the towel log on my clipboard filled itself. Room 313, towels, 3. Guest, Margaret Hayes. Deceased. Request, cleanliness. Notes, daughter refuses to wash her hands of guilt. I stumbled back into the hallway. The log sheet was gone from my clipboard. In its place, a single sheet of hotel stationery, the ink bleeding through the paper like tears. They aren't for drying. They're for wrapping. The Grand Regent doesn't give clean towels. It takes dirty souls. Eleanor Voss, from Camp Everstill, from the bellwether logs, from the Seelbach mirrors. Her words were a thread in a tapestry of hunger I couldn't escape. Silas found me slumped against the wall outside 313, shaking. He didn't ask what I'd seen, just pressed a fresh log sheet into my hands. "You're late for checkout," he said flatly. "The towels multiply when witnesses linger." He peered into room 313. His face didn't change when he saw the tub. "Your mother's locket. She left it behind when she walked into the river, just like you left behind the guilt." "She didn't walk," I whispered. "I found her on the bathroom floor, pills everywhere. I was 16. I just stood there, didn't call 911 fast enough, didn't know CPR. I washed her face with a towel, a white one, like these." Silas nodded slowly. The Regent remembers every unwashed sin, every unwept tear. The East Wing has no water because the pipes are full of something else. Something thicker, it leaks out as towels, as locket dreams, as the need to be clean. He touched the damp towel on 303's bed. It steamed under his fingers. This wing isn't sealed because of mold. It's sealed because the grief here is contagious. It seeps into your skin like river water, makes you heavy, makes you sink. He led me downstairs, past rooms where towels now covered every surface, draped over chairs, piled on dressers, stuffed into light fixtures. The dripping sound followed us, a steady plink, plink, plink that echoed in my bones. In the staff room, he pointed to a working shower. "Clean yourself. The towels know when you're carrying dirt." The hot water scalded my skin. I scrubbed until my arms were raw, but the smell of river water clung to me. When I turned off the taps, the dripping started again, not from the showerhead, from the mirror. Dark fluid seeped from the glass, pooling on the sink. In the reflection, room 309's black tub filled the mirror's surface. My mother floated in it, eyes closed, hair fanned out like seaweed. In her hand, she held not pills, but a folded towel. She opened her eyes. They were the color of the Willamette at midnight. Washed clean, they seemed to say. Be washed clean. I fled the staff room. Silas was gone. The front doors were chained shut. The plink, plink, plink was everywhere now, a sound not just of water, but of weight, of things settling, of souls sinking. I ran back to the east wing. The steel door stood open. Moonlight bled through the third-floor windows. Every sealed room door hung open. Every bed held towels, not folded, arranged, stacked into pyramids, twisted into ropes, laid out like shrouds. And in the center of the hallway, where no room existed on the blueprints, stood a new door, unmarked, unsealed. Its wood was dark with moisture. The dripping came from behind it. I pushed it open. Not a room, a chamber. Walls lined with shelves holding thousands of folded towels, each labeled with a name and date in that same blue ink. Sarah Miller, 1987, Eleanor Voss, 1987, Mildred Calloway, 1973, Daniel Finch, 1958, and at eye level, a fresh label, Margaret Hayes, 2026. Below it, 3 pristine white towels waited. In the center of the chamber stood a stone basin, carved with symbols that made my eyes water. It was filled with the same black fluid from room 313's tub. Floating in it was my mother's locket. And beside the basin, an armchair faced a window overlooking not the Willamette, but a vast, still lake under a moonless sky. Blackwater Lake, Camp Everstill's grave. The chair was empty, but the cushion was damp. A child's voice whispered from the basin, bubbling up with the plink, plink, plink. She's waiting for you to sit, to be clean. Sarah Miller stepped from behind the shelves, not bloated, not blue. Just a girl in a yellow sundress, barefoot, her hair dripping lake water onto the stone floor. In her hand, she held a towel. It steamed faintly. The Regent doesn't want your pain, she said. Her voice echoed with the sound of children singing underwater. It wants your stain, the things that make you dirty, your guilt, your shame, your mother's pills, your slow hands. It washes them away, leaves you empty, shiny, ready to be folded. I backed toward the door. I don't want to be empty. Sarah smiled, a smile too wide for her face. Everyone wants to be clean. She pointed to the chair. Your mother's been waiting since you left her on that bathroom floor. She carried your guilt for 20 years. Now it's your turn to carry hers. The black fluid in the basin rippled. My mother rose from it, not as she was in death, pale, slack-jawed, surrounded by pill bottles, but as she was before the darkness took her, warm eyes, auburn hair, the scent of lavender soap clinging to her skin. She held out a hand, not to me, to the 7-year-old me who'd found her, the child who'd never stopped scrubbing her hands raw. The towels don't dry you, my mother whispered. Her voice was the sound of a river smoothing stones. They replace you, one layer at a time, until there's nothing left but clean white cotton where your heart used to be. She stepped onto the dry stone floor. The black fluid didn't drip from her. It clung to her like a second skin. Sit, Maggie. Let the stillness wash us both. Sarah placed the steaming towel in my hands. It was warm, heavy, smelling of lavender and river mud. As I held it, memories flooded me, not just mine, 100 lifetimes of unwashed grief poured through the terry cloth. A man sobbing over a car crash he caused, a woman staring at an empty crib, a boy dropping his father's fishing hat into dark water. The Grand Regent didn't just collect pain, it recycled it. Turned sorrow into fresh towels for the next lost soul. I dropped the towel. No. Sarah's smile vanished. The chamber darkened. The black fluid in the basin rose, forming shapes, hands, faces, open mouths, screaming silently. My mother's reflection in the fluid twisted, her eyes black voids. "The Regent hungers," she gurgled. "It has since the fire of '87. When the guests burned, their guilt didn't burn with them. It seeped into the foundations, became the water that isn't water, the towels that aren't towels. Sit." The armchair slid toward me, scraping the stone. The black fluid pooled around my ankles, cold and thick as grave soil. It carried whispers. Clean me, fold me, forget me. I ran, back through the east wing, past rooms where towels now slithered like living things, across the floors, past hallways where the dripping had become a flood. The steel door to the main hotel was locked. I pounded on it. "Silas, let me out!" The dripping stopped. Silence. Thick, suffocating. Then a single plink. From the lobby mirror. I turned. Every mirror in the Grand Regent, shattered, boarded up, dust-covered, reflected the same scene. Not the decaying lobby. The chamber, the stone basin, the armchair. And in the chair, facing the window overlooking Blackwater Lake, sat my mother. Her body was wrapped head to toe in white towels, only her face exposed. Her eyes were closed, peaceful, clean. On the floor beside her chair lay a single folded towel, waiting for me. Silas's voice came from the boiler room door, calm, resigned. "You can't outrun what you carry, Maggie. The Regent doesn't just remember the dead, it remembers the living who wish they were dead. The towels, they're not for the guests, they're for the ones who survive." He stepped into the lobby, holding the master key. His eyes held no judgment, only sorrow. "Your mother sat. She's clean now, at peace. The chair won't be empty long. The Regent always finds new stains to wash." He pressed a fresh log sheet into my hands. My name wasn't on it, just an entry in blue ink. Vacancy filled, Margaret Hayes. Towels used. 3. Soul status, clean. Next guest, TBD. I looked at my reflection in the lobby mirror, not my face, my mother's, wrapped in towels, smiling. The dripping started again, not from the mirrors, from my own hands. Dark fluid seeped from my pores, pooling on the marble floor. The scent of lavender filled the air. Silas placed a warm, dry towel over my shoulders. It felt like forgiveness, like surrender. "The chair is waiting," he whispered. "Be clean." I walked back to the east wing. The new door stood open. Moonlight streamed through the window in the chamber, painting silver stripes on the stone floor. My mother's wrapped form sat serene in the armchair. Sarah Miller stood beside her, holding a fresh towel. I sat down. The black fluid rose warm and gentle as bathwater. It didn't burn. It cleansed. The guilt of my mother's death, the shame of my addiction, the weight of surviving when others didn't, it all dissolved in the dark water. My skin tingled. My mind went quiet. Peace. Such sweet, silent peace. Sarah draped the towel over my head. It smelled of lavender and home. As it settled over my face, the last thing I saw was the basin. My reflection wasn't there, only my mother's face smiling. Her towel-wrapped hand reached out, not to touch me, but to take the locket floating in the fluid. She pressed it to her chest. where her heart used to be. The towel grew heavier, warm, like a blanket pulled up on a winter night. Plink. The drip had stopped. Silas found the log sheet on the front desk at dawn. He added one line in his own shaky hand. East Wing Towel. Log, March 19th. 0 towels observed. All guests washed clean. He locked the steel door, took the master key, drove to a Greyhound station in Beaverton. A young man with hollow eyes and track marks on his arms sat on a bench, clutching a crumpled napkin. Silas placed the key in his palm. It was warm, damp, smelling faintly of lavender. "The Regent is hiring," Silas rasped. "East Wing only." The bus pulled away. Silas walked back to the Grand Regent. In the sealed east wing, behind the bolted steel door, the stone basin filled itself with black fluid. Floating in it was a new locket, engraved on its surface, Jamie Rousseau. And on the armchair facing the window, 3 pristine white towels waited, folded, ready. Some vacancies aren't meant to be filled. They're meant to be folded. That's where this story ends. Let's continue with the next. Beneath the rotting floorboards of Camp Everstill, I didn't believe in ghosts, not really. I believed in trauma, in memory, in the way old places hold on to pain like dampness in wood. But I didn't believe in spirits that lingered, watching, waiting, least of all in a place as forgotten as Camp Everstill. It was supposed to be temporary, just a summer job, groundskeeper, caretaker, whatever you wanted to call it, for a camp that hadn't seen children since the late 80s. The pay was laughable, but the rent was free. A small cabin near the edge of Blackwater Lake, nestled between pines so dense they choked out the sun by mid-afternoon. I needed somewhere quiet to disappear for a while, somewhere without Wi-Fi, without neighbors, without the constant hum of a city that never let me forget what I'd done. The listing was posted on a regional job board under seasonal maintenance, remote location. No photos, just coordinates and a phone number. The voice on the other end was elderly, female, with a smoker's rasp and zero patience. "You know how to use an axe?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Good. Cabin's got a wood stove, roof leaks in the east corner, floors soft in the back room. Don't step there unless you want to meet God early." She hung up before I could ask about the camp's history. I arrived at dusk. The drive-in was a nightmare. Narrow dirt roads swallowed by overgrowth, branches scraping the sides of my truck like skeletal fingers. When I finally broke through the tree line, Camp Everstill sprawled before me like a corpse half buried in moss. Dozens of cabins, most collapsed or leaning drunkenly into the earth. A mess hall with shattered windows, a boathouse sagging into the lake. And beyond it all, the water, still, black, reflecting nothing but the bruised sky. My cabin, Cabin 7, was one of the few still standing upright. It smelled of wet rot and mouse droppings when I pushed open the door. Inside, a rusted wood stove, a cot with a mildewed mattress, a table with 2 chairs, and a single oil lamp hanging from a hook in the ceiling. The floorboards groaned under my weight, especially toward the back, where the woman had warned me not to step. One plank near the far wall was visibly sunken, its edges splintered and dark with moisture. I dropped my duffel bag by the door and lit the lamp. Shadows leapt across the walls, stretching long and thin like grasping hands. Outside, the wind picked up, whispering through the pines. It sounded almost like voices. That first night, I slept fitfully. Every creak of the cabin, every rustle in the underbrush jolted me awake. Around 2 a.m., I heard something new, a low rhythmic thumping from beneath the floor, like someone tapping a stick against wood. Steady, patient. I sat up, heart pounding, and held my breath. The sound stopped. Morning brought relief. Sunlight filtered weakly through the trees, painting stripes across the dusty floor. I spent the day clearing brush around the main lodge, chopping deadfall for the stove, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling that I was being watched. The lake never rippled, not once. Even when the wind gusted hard enough to rattle the shutters, the surface remained glassy, smooth, unnaturally calm. That's when I found the journal. Tucked beneath a loose floorboard near the stove, clearly pried up before, was a water-stained notebook bound in leather. The pages were brittle, ink faded to brown, but legible. It belonged to someone named Eleanor Voss, a camp counselor in the summer of 1987. June 14th. Kids are restless. Too much rain? They keep talking about the girl in the lake. Said they saw her last night during flashlight tag. Pale face just below the surface, eyes wide open. Told them it was just a log or a fish. But little Timmy won't stop crying. Says she whispered his name. June 22nd. Something's wrong with cabin 7, the floor in the back room. It's warm, even when the rest of the cabin is freezing. And there's a smell, sweet, like rotting fruit. Checked underneath today, nothing but mud and roots. But the ground feels hollow. July 3rd. They're digging again, in the woods behind the boathouse. I didn't tell anyone, but I followed them last night. 4 of the older boys, led by Danny Reeves. They had shovels. Said they were looking for treasure. But they weren't laughing, they were scared. When I called out, they ran. Left the hole half dug. I went closer. There was something at the bottom, wrapped in burlap. I didn't touch it. July 10th. Eleanor's handwriting grew jagged, frantic. They took her. The girl from cabin 3, Sarah Miller, vanished during the storm last night. Search party found her shoe by the dock. Nothing else. Sheriff says she drowned. But I saw Danny this morning. He had mud on his boots, and he wouldn't look me in the eye. July 12th. I went to the sheriff. Showed him the hole in the woods. He laughed, said kids dig holes all the time. But I know what I saw. That burlap wasn't empty. July 15th. Last entry. They're watching me now. From the trees, from the lake, even from inside the cabin. I hear scratching under the floor at night. Not mice. Something bigger. Something that breathes. I'm leaving tomorrow. I can't stay here. If you find this, don't trust the silence. Don't trust the stillness. Camp Everstill isn't empty. It's full of what they buried and what they didn't bury deep enough. I closed the journal slowly, my hands trembling. 1987, 39 years ago. Sarah Miller, Danny Reeves, names I'd never heard before, yet they clung to me like cobwebs. That night, I nailed a plank over the soft spot in the floor, just in case. The knocking started at midnight. Not tapping, not scratching. Full, heavy knocks, like a fist pounding from below. Boom, boom, boom. Each one shook. The cot. I grabbed the axe I'd been using to split wood and stood over the patched floorboards, sweat slick on my palms. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. Silence. Then a slow, wet drag across the underside of the floor, like something dragging itself through mud. It circled the cabin, stopping directly beneath my feet. I didn't sleep. By dawn, I was exhausted, paranoid, jumping at shadows. I decided to investigate the woods behind the boathouse. Armed with the axe and a flashlight, I pushed through ferns and brambles until I found it, a shallow depression, overgrown but unmistakable. The hole Eleanor mentioned. I dug. Just a few inches down, my shovel hit something soft. Fabric. Burlap. Rotted but intact. My stomach turned. I peeled it back with the tip of the axe. Bones. Small. Human. A child's femur. A fragment of a skull, and tangled in the remains. A faded blue hair ribbon, identical to the one described in local news archives I looked up on my phone the night before. Sarah Miller's favorite color was blue. I stumbled back, bile rises in my throat. I needed to call the police. But my phone had no signal. Never had since I arrived. I ran back to the cabin, planning to drive into town, but my truck wouldn't start. The battery was dead, though it had been fine yesterday. The fuel line was clogged with something thick and black like tar. Trapped. That evening, the lake began to ripple, not from wind, from something moving beneath the surface. Slow, deliberate circles spreading outward from the center. I watched from the porch, axe in hand, as the ripples grew closer to shore, closer to the dock. Then a shape emerged, pale, bloated, hair floating like seaweed, a face, childlike, distorted by decades underwater, turned toward me, eyes milky white, mouth open in a silent scream. I slammed the cabin door, locked it, shoved the table against it. My breath came in ragged gasps. Outside, the ripples stopped. Silence returned. But the knocking beneath the floor began again. Louder, faster. Boom, 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 boom. And then a voice, gurgling, wet, as if spoken through a throat full of lake water. Let me in. I recognized it from the journal. Sarah Miller. No, I whispered. You're not real. You're dead. I'm cold, the voice sobbed. So cold. Let me warm up. The floorboard I'd nailed down began to lift. Splinters popped. Nails screeched as they tore free. From the widening gap, a hand emerged. Gray, webbed with algae, fingers too long, nails blackened and sharp. It clawed at the air, reaching for me. I swung the axe. It bit deep into the wrist. Black fluid oozed out, steaming as it hit the floorboards. The hand jerked back with a shriek that wasn't human. It was the sound of drowning, of suffocation, of a child trapped in darkness for 39 years. Silence fell. I collapsed against the wall, shaken, covered in sweat and that foul-smelling fluid. Dawn came. The hand was gone. The floorboard lay flat again, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. I spent the next 3 days trying to escape. Walked 5 miles through the woods only to circle back to the lake. Tried signaling planes with a mirror. None flew overhead. The camp was sealed off, as if the forest itself refused to let me leave. On the 4th night, I heard singing, a child's voice, clear and sweet, drifting from the lake. Row, row, row your boat. I peered through the window. Dozens of figures stood waist-deep in the water, pale, bloated, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Children, all of them, holding hands, swaying gently. And at the center, Sarah Miller, pointing toward my cabin. They knew I was here. That's when I understood. Camp Everstill wasn't haunted by one ghost. It was a graveyard, a dumping ground. Not just Sarah, but others. Kids who vanished. During storms, during hikes, during accidents, the camp covered up. And whatever was beneath my floor, it wasn't just Sarah. It was the thing that pulled them under, the thing that lived in the hollow beneath the cabin, the thing that fed on silence and stillness. I tried burning the cabin down, set fire to the mattress, but the flames died instantly. as if smothered by invisible hands. Now I write this by lamplight, listening to the floor breathe beneath me. The knocking has stopped, but the dragon hasn't. It's closer now, right under my chair. I can feel the heat rising through the boards, that same warmth Eleanor described. Sweet rot, damp earth, hunger. They don't want me to leave. They want me to join them, to become part of the stillness, to sink into the hollow beneath the rotting floorboards of Camp Everstill and never move again. And this story ends here. The next one begins now. The elevator descended one floor, too many, opening onto an unplanned lobby. I took the night shift elevator operator job at the Obsidian Tower because the paycheck covered my sister's medical bills. Not the whole bill, just the copay for her biweekly transfusions. The rest came from selling plasma twice a week and skipping meals until my ribs pressed sharp against my skin. The ad was taped to a bulletin board in a 24-hour laundromat where I'd been sleeping in my rusted Corolla. Elevator attendant needed, Obsidian Tower, 25 HR cash, no experience, must work nights, discretion required. No address, just coordinates that led me through downtown Portland's underbelly, a district of pawn shops with barred windows and alleys reeking of urine and fried food, until I found the tower. It wasn't on any map. Rising like a shard of broken obsidian between a shuttered tattoo parlor and a dumpster overflowing with rotting produce. The building was all wrong. 20 stories tall, but the street-level entrance was boarded up with plywood stamped, "Condemned by Order of City Council, 1987. The side alley entrance, a rusted metal door marked "Service Personnel Only, Biosolids Handling," was the only way in. I knocked 3 times, the way the voice on the phone had instructed. The door creaked open. An old man stood there, not just old. Ancient. His skin hung loose on his skull like melted candle wax. One milky eye drifted toward his ear, the other fixed on me with unnerving clarity. He wore a frayed elevator operator's uniform, brass buttons tarnished green. No name tag, just a silver key dangling from a chain around his neck. "You're late," he rasped. His breath smelled of wet pennies and mothballs. "Shift starts at midnight, ends at dawn. You operate only the service elevator. You do not speak to passengers. You do not make eye contact. You do not press any button unless a passenger requests it. And you never acknowledge Floor B." "Floor B?" His good eye narrowed. "It doesn't exist. If the panel shows it, it's a glitch. If a passenger asks for it, they're confused. You reset the panel. You take them to the lobby. You forget it happened." He thrust a heavy brass key into my hand. It was ice cold. "This unlocks the service elevator. Only tonight. At 5:59 a.m., you return it to the hook behind the panel. If you're late, the tower remembers." He stepped back, letting me into a narrow concrete hallway lit by a single flickering bulb. "Your predecessor quit without notice, left his key on the floor." He pointed to a dark stain on the concrete. "Don't be like him." The service elevator was a relic, brass doors etched with peacocks, now dull and pitted. Inside, a control panel of bakelite buttons glowed faintly green. L for lobby, 1 through 20, and a blank space where B should be. The air smelled of oil and something faintly sweet, like forgotten fruit left to rot. I slipped a brass key into a hidden slot beneath the panel. The elevator hummed to life. Midnight. The first passenger arrived at 12:17 a.m., a woman in a 1940s floral dress, her hair pinned neatly, carrying a small suitcase. She didn't speak, didn't look at me, just extended a hand holding a silver key card stamped 13. I inserted it into the reader beside the panel. The elevator descended smoothly. At floor 13, the doors opened onto a hallway identical to the one in the Ravenswood Grand, the one with the mirrors facing every door. The woman stepped out without a backward glance. The doors closed. The panel flickered. For 3 seconds, the blank space where B should be glowed a sickly green. I slammed my palm against the reset button. The light died. 1:03 a.m. A man in a bellhop uniform, red braid on his sleeve, cap pulled low, handed me a key card. 2:17. His face was smooth, featureless, blank as polished stone. The elevator descended. At floor 2, the doors opened onto the lobby of the Aurora Grand, the one with the blue staff key cards scattered like dead leaves. The bellhop stepped out. As the doors closed, I saw him in the reflection of the brass doors. His uniform had changed. Now he wore the stained overalls of Silas from Hollowbrook Sanatorium. He turned his blank face toward the elevator, smiled. The panel flickered. Bah glowed. I reset it. My hands shook. 3:48 a.m. A child, no older than 8, dripping wet. Her yellow sundress clung to her thin frame. Water pooled around her bare feet. She held out a key card. 17. Sarah Miller, from Camp Everstill. From the black water, the elevator descended. Her small hand gripped the railing. She hummed under her breath. Row, row, row your boat. At floor 3, the doors opened onto a forest at twilight. Ancient pines, a still black lake. Sarah stepped out, turned back. Her eyes were the color of lake silt. He's waiting for you, she whispered, in the unplanned place. The doors closed. The panel flickered violently. Burned green. I reset it, too late. The elevator lurched downward, not stopping at lobby, not stopping at sub-basement. The indicator dial spun wildly. L, B. The descent lasted forever. The cables groaned like dying things. The lights flickered, plunging us into darkness, then flaring back to life. The sweet rot smell intensified, mixed now with the scent of wet earth and roses. The brass doors began to weep. Dark fluid seeping from the seams, dripping onto the floor. It smelled like the lake at Camp Everstill, like the mud beneath Hollowbrook's floorboards, like the void behind the Ravenswood Grand's mirrors. The elevator stopped with a shudder. The doors slid open. Not a basement, not a boiler room, a lobby, vast, impossibly vast, stretching farther than the human eye should perceive. Marble floors veined with black, reflecting the light of 1,000 crystal chandeliers hanging from a ceiling lost in shadow. Velvet ropes cordoned off empty check-in desks. A grand staircase swept upward into darkness, and everywhere, mirrors. Floor-to-ceiling mirrors lining every wall, reflecting the endless lobby, multiplying the chandeliers, the ropes, the emptiness. But the reflections were wrong, distorted. In one mirror, the chandeliers burned with cold blue flame. In another, the marble floor was cracked, weeds pushing through the stone. In a third, the ropes were made of frayed human hair. The air was silent, not quiet. Silent. The absence of sound pressed against my eardrums like deep water, and the cold, deep, bone-aching cold that had nothing to do with temperature. It was the cold of forgotten graves, of stillness that had lasted too long. I stepped out. The brass doors hissed shut behind me, locked. The panel inside showed only bouquet, glowing steadily, no reset button. That's when I saw them. Figures, dozens, hundreds, standing motionless behind the velvet ropes, waiting in line at the empty check-in desks, sitting on plush benches beneath the chandeliers, all facing the mirrors, all dressed in clothes from different eras, a flapper dress from the 1920s, a bellhop uniform from the 1950s, a sundress from the 1980s, all utterly still, all utterly silent, and all staring at their own reflections. Their faces in the glass weren't theirs. The reflections showed bloated corpses floating in black water, skeletons draped in moth-eaten finery, figures made of shifting shadows and lake weeds. The real people didn't seem to notice. They just stared, frozen in place, as if waiting for permission to move. A hand touched my shoulder. I spun around. The ancient elevator operator stood there. His good eye gleamed in the chandelier light. The other remained clouded, drifting. He no longer wore his uniform. He wore a tailored suit from another century, threadbare at the cuffs. In his hand, he held a silver ledger book. "Welcome to the Unplanned lobby," he said, his voice no longer raspy, clear, resonant, ancient. "We've been waiting for you." "Who are you?" I whispered. "I am the keeper, and this is where the forgotten go when even the abandoned places forget them." He opened the ledger. The pages were filled with names, not written, but formed. From dark water that shifted and pooled on the paper, names I knew: Eleanor Voss, Sarah Miller, Mildred Calloway, Alastair Finch. And at the bottom, a fresh entry in shimmering ink: Alice Chen. My name. "You're not alive," I said. The words tasted like ash. He smiled, a terrible, gentle smile. "Neither are you. Not truly. You died 3 weeks ago in that car crash on Highway 99. The one you don't remember because the stillness took it from you, took the pain, took the guilt of surviving when your sister didn't." He tapped the ledger. "The tower collects what the world discards: grief, guilt, unfinished stories. It offers peace. A place to sit, to be still, to be remembered." I stumbled back. "No, I'm alive. I feel my heartbeat." "Because the stillness lets you feel it," he finished softly. "It lets you believe until you're ready to join the queue." He pointed to the nearest mirror. "Look!" I turned. My reflection wasn't me. It was my sister. Pale, tubes snaking from her arms, her eyes wide with the terror of the crash I couldn't remember, the crash where I'd lived and she hadn't. Her reflection mouthed 2 words: "Let go." Behind her, in the mirror's depth, I saw the chair. The armchair from room 13 at the Bellwether, facing a window overlooking Blackwater Lake. On the seat cushion sat my mother's cracked teacup, filled with dark water, and beside it a single pearl earring, Mildred Calloway's. "You carried too much," the keeper said. "The stillness hungers for it. The elevator didn't malfunction. It chose you. It sensed the vacancy in your chest where your sister's heartbeat should be." He placed a cold hand on my arm. "Sit. The chair's waiting. The story's finished." I ran, past the silent figures, past the velvet ropes, toward the grand staircase. The marble steps were slick with the dark fluid weeping from the elevator. Halfway up, I glanced back. The figures were no longer still. They turned as one, smooth, mechanical. Their faces were blank now, all of them. No eyes, no mouths, just smooth, pale skin. They moved toward me, not walking, but sliding across the marble, their feet never lifting. The silence deepened, becoming a physical pressure, crushing my lungs. I reached the top of the stairs. A hallway stretched into darkness. Every door stood open. Every room held a single armchair facing a window. Every window showed a different abandoned place. The rotting floorboards of Camp Everstill, the mirrored hallway of the Ravenswood Grand, the lake at Hollowbrook. Room 1313. I slammed the door shut, locked it with a tarnished brass key that materialized in my palm, leaned against the wood, gasping. The chair sat in the center of the room. Moonlight streamed through the window, showing not Portland, but the black expanse of Blackwater Lake. On the seat cushion lay the teacup, full, steaming. The smell of Earl Grey filled the air. My sister's voice whispered from the cup, "You promised you'd take me to the lake one last time." I hadn't. I'd been too busy working, too busy surviving. The crash happened on the way to pick up her medication. I survived with a broken arm. She didn't survive at all. The guilt had eaten me alive until the stillness found me, offering numbness, offering forgetfulness, offering a job at a hotel that didn't exist. The doorknob rattled, softly at first, then violently. The wood groaned, cracks spiderwebbed across the surface. Through the keyhole, I saw smooth, featureless faces pressed against the gap, blank eyes, hungry silence. I picked up the teacup. The warmth spread through my chest. The words came unbidden. "I'm sorry, May. I should have been there. I should have driven slower. I should have held your hand when you were afraid." Tears streamed down my face. "I love you. I always will." The cup emptied itself. The rattling stopped. The cracks in the door sealed shut. Moonlight warmed my face. Outside the window, May floated on the lake surface. Not broken, not tubes, just my little sister at 12, laughing as she skipped stones. She waved, smiled. Her reflection in the glass wasn't water. It was the sunlit pier at Camp Everstill, the way it looked before the stillness took it. The chair was warm beneath me. The floral upholstery felt like the armchair in our childhood living room. The scraping stopped. The cold lifted. The silence wasn't crushing anymore. It was peaceful, complete. The door opened. The keeper stood there holding the silver ledger. He didn't smile, just nodded. "Welcome home." He placed the ledger on my lap. The final entry glowed. Alice Chin, room 1313, vacancy filled. Below it, a new line formed in dark water. Next attendant required. Apply within. I looked up. The keeper was gone. The door stood open. In the hallway, the silent figures had returned to their places, waiting, watching their distorted reflections. I closed my eyes. The last thing I felt was the chair rocking gently beneath me. Not from the wind, from something breathing in the space behind me. Something that had waited 40 years for this moment. Something that would keep waiting. At 5:59 a.m., the service elevator in the obsidian tower chimed softly in the condemned alley. The brass doors slid open, empty. On the floor lay a single item, a heavy brass key. Ice cold. A shadow detached itself from the alley wall. A young man in a threadbare jacket, dark circles under his eyes, clutching a crumpled job ad. He picked up the key. His hands didn't shake. His breath didn't fog in the morning air. He didn't remember the car crash, didn't remember his sister's name, didn't remember why he was here. He only knew the stillness had called him, and the vacancy needed filling. He stepped into the elevator, inserted the key. The panel glowed green. La Paix. All the way to 20 Coeur, and the blank space where Paix should be. He pressed. Play. The doors closed, the cables groaned, the descent began. And with that, this story comes to an end. Let's move on to the next one. Every room had a mirror facing the door. I should have turned around when I saw the first mirror, right there in the lobby, mounted dead center on the far wall, reflecting the front doors like a silent sentinel. But desperation makes you ignore omens. My bank account had bled dry after Mom's funeral. The medical bills, the cremation costs, the quiet, crushing weight of being the last one left. When the sheriff's department handed me the keys to her condemned bungalow and said, 30 days to clear it out or it's ours, I didn't have 30 days. I had a duffel bag, a half tank of gas, and a Craigslist ad screaming, Room 75 WK, cash only, no questions. The address led me to the edge of Ravenswood, a town that smelled of wet asphalt and forgotten things. The building wasn't a hotel, not anymore. The Ravenswood Grand sign hung crooked over the entrance, the grand half torn away by wind or time, leaving just Ravenswood D. It looked like a rotten tooth in a jawbone of boarded-up storefronts. The man who answered the door didn't give his name, just a nod, a grunt, and a key on a frayed blue string. His eyes were the color of ditch water, and he smelled like mothballs and damp wool. He led me up 3 flights of stairs that groaned like dying animals underfoot. Every landing had a mirror, not small ones, floor to ceiling, tarnished silver frames, positioned directly opposite the stairwell doors. As we passed each one, I caught glimpses of myself, pale, hollow-eyed, hair pulled back in a fraying ponytail, but also something else, a flicker in the glass, a shadow that didn't match my movement. I told myself it was the flickering bulb overhead, the building's age, my own exhaustion. He stopped at room 314. Last room on the hall, utilities included, no pets, no visitors after 9, pay every Monday. He didn't look at me when he spoke. His gaze kept sliding toward the mirror at the end of the hall. And don't cover the mirror. What? The mirror, he said, finally meeting my eyes. His pupils were too wide, swallowing the pale irises. Facing the door. Don't cover it. Don't turn it. Don't touch it. Just leave it be. He pressed the key into my palm. His skin was cold. You'll pay tonight. Cash. The room was smaller than a prison cell, a narrow bed with a stained mattress, a sink with rust bleeding from its taps, a single window crusted with grime overlooking a dead-end alley choked with trash, and directly opposite the door, dominating the far wall, a mirror. Not just any mirror. An antique thing, easily 6 feet tall, its silvered glass warped with age, the ornate frame blackened with tarnish. It reflected the room perfectly, but the light in the glass felt wrong, colder, deeper. I dropped my duffel on the bed. The silence pressed in, thick and heavy. Outside, the city sounds were muffled, distant. Inside, the only noise was the slow drip, drip, drip of the leaky faucet and the low hum of the old building settling. I unpacked my few things, a change of clothes, Mom's chipped teacup, the only thing I'd kept from the house, a photo of us at the county fair when I was 10. I placed the photo on the nightstand, facing away from the mirror. Something about that glass made me not want my mother's face reflected in it. That first night, I lay awake. The mirror glowed faintly in the dark, catching the sickly yellow light of the street lamp outside. I kept my back to it, pulling the thin blanket over my head like a child, but sleep wouldn't come. The dripping faucet, the groan of pipes, the sound of footsteps in the hall, slow, deliberate, stopping outside my door. I held my breath. The footsteps didn't move on, they just waited. Then a soft scratch at the keyhole, like fingernails. I squeezed my eyes shut. It's just rats. Old buildings have rats. But rats don't breathe. I heard it then, a wet, ragged inhalation right outside the door. Close enough to touch. I didn't move, didn't breathe. After what felt like hours, the footsteps faded down the hall. Morning light did little to ease the dread. I found the landlord in the basement, tinkering with a fuse box that sparked ominously. "You hear anything last night?" I asked, my voice tight. He didn't look up. "This building breathes. It remembers." "Remembers what?" He finally turned, wiping grease on his overalls. His eyes flicked past me toward the stairs, toward the mirrors. "People. It remembers the people who stayed, the ones who never left." He handed me a rusted bucket. "Fix the leak in your sink, or don't. Either way, pay tonight." I spent the day trying to ignore the mirror. I scrubbed the sink, patched the worst of the leaks with plumber's tape I found in a drawer, and walked to a corner store for instant noodles and a cheap burner phone. No signal inside the hotel, none at all. The store clerk, an old man with milky eyes, barely glanced at me when he rang up my items. "New at the Grand, eh?" he muttered. "Yeah, just for a while." He snorted. "A while's all it takes. That place don't like strangers, especially not when the mirrors are hungry." I froze. "What mirrors?" He just shook his head, sliding my change across the counter. "Don't look too long," he whispered. "Don't blink." Back in room 314, I avoided the mirror's gaze. I ate my noodles at the tiny table back turned, but I could feel it, that cold spot in the air behind me, the sense of being watched. When I finally dared to glance at it, my reflection stared back, tired, wary. But behind me, in the glass, the room looked different. The bed was made with crisp white linens. The walls were freshly painted, and in the corner, where my duffel bag sat, stood a woman in a 1940s floral dress, her back to me, humming softly as she brushed long, dark hair. I spun around. The room was empty, just dust motes dancing in the weak sunlight. My heart hammered against my ribs. Stress, grief, sleep deprivation. I recited the words like a prayer. That night, the scratching returned, louder, insistent, not at the keyhole this time, at the mirror itself. Scritch, scritch, scritch. I lay rigid in bed, eyes squeezed shut, blanket pulled over my head. The scratching stopped. Then came the tapping, light, rhythmic on the glass, like a fingernail. Tap, 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 tap. I couldn't stand it. I threw off the blanket. The mirror was fogged, not with steam, with breath. Someone, or something, had been standing close to the glass, breathing on it. In the center of the fogged patch, words were forming, written by an invisible finger. "Let me out." I lunged out of bed, grabbing the only weapon I had, Mom's heavy cast-iron teacup. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. The fog vanished instantly, as if wiped clean. My reflection stared back, wide-eyed, wild-haired, but as I watched, it didn't move when I did. It stayed perfectly still. Then, slowly, it smiled. A smile I didn't make. A smile too wide, too sharp. I threw the teacup. It shattered against the mirror with a sound like a gunshot. Glass shards flew everywhere, but the mirror didn't break. Not really. The cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, but through them I saw not the wall behind it, but another room. Darker, colder. The same layout as mine, but draped in mildewed velvet curtains. And standing in the center, facing the broken glass, was the woman from the 1940s dress. Her face was pale, her eyes black voids. She raised a hand, palm flat against the glass. On her wrist, a thin scar pulsed red. I backed away, tripping over the bed frame. The cracks sealed themselves before my eyes, the glass smoothing out, the shards of teacup vanishing as if they'd never existed. Only the mug remained, whole and unbroken, sitting neatly on the nightstand. My reflection stared back, breathing hard, tears streaming down my face. But in the glass, my reflection wasn't crying. It was still smiling. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I packed my duffel. Screw the $75. Screw the landlord. I'd sleep in my car. Anything but this. I flung open the door and froze. The hallway mirror, the one at the very end, was gone. In its place was a dark archway, not a door. An archway cut directly into the wall, leading into impenetrable blackness. From the darkness came the smell of damp earth and old roses, and the sound of humming, the same tune I'd heard in the mirror the day before. I slammed my room door shut, locking it with trembling hands. Leaning against it, I slid to the floor. That's when I saw the note slipped under the door. No envelope, just a piece of yellowed hotel stationery, the ink faded, but legible. They watch through the glass. They wait in the between. Covering the mirror traps them with you. Breaking it lets them out. The only way to leave is to let them in. Don't trust your reflection. It's not yours anymore. Eleanor. Eleanor. The name from Camp Everstill. How was this connected? My head spun. I remembered the journal entry about the hollow ground beneath the cabin. The Grandview Hotel's ledger filled with forgotten names. Were they all part of the same hunger? The same ancient ravenous stillness that clung to abandoned places? That afternoon, I found Eleanor's room. Room 217. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, it was untouched. Dust lay thick on the dresser, the bed, the nightstand. But the mirror was covered, not with cloth, with dozens of layers of peeling wallpaper nailed haphazardly over the glass. Scratches covered the wood beneath, deep, frantic gouges, as if someone had clawed at it for hours. On the bed lay a single object, a small, tarnished hand mirror. Its glass was cracked down the middle. I picked it up. My reflection stared back, but the crack split my face in two. One side was me. The other side was the woman in the floral dress. She mouthed two words. Help us. I dropped the mirror. It shattered. The pieces didn't scatter. They melted into the floorboards like mercury, leaving dark stains that smelled of roses. The landlord found me sitting in the hallway outside room 217, a-shaking. He didn't ask what I'd seen. He just sighed, a sound like dry leaves crumbling. Eleanor tried to fight them, he said, his voice flat. Tried to seal them in, but the mirrors, they're not windows, they're doors. And doors can be opened from either side. He crouched beside me, his breath sour. You think you're the first to run. They always run, until they realize the only way out is through. Through what? Through the reflection? He tapped his chest. They take what you carry, the pain, the grief, the things that make you heavy. They feed on it, and when you're empty, you stay. Like Eleanor, like all the others. He stood up, brushing dust from his knees. Pay your rent tonight, or don't. It doesn't matter. The mirrors choose who stays. Night fell like a shroud. I barricaded the door with a flimsy dresser. Useless. I knew it was useless. The mirror glowed in the dark, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. I sat on the bed, Mom's photo clutched in my hand, staring at my own terrified face in the glass. And then, slowly, my reflection changed. It wasn't me anymore. It was Mom, younger, happy, the way I remembered her before the sickness. She smiled, holding out her hand toward the glass. "Come home," she mouthed. "It doesn't hurt here." Tears blurred my vision. I wanted it so badly, to not feel this raw, hollow ache, to not wake up every morning to the silence of an empty house. I stood up, drawn to the mirror like a moth to flame. My hand rose, my fingers touched the cold glass. It felt warm where my reflection's hand met mine. Almost there, Mom's reflection whispered. The glass rippled like water. My fingers sank in, up to the wrist. The warmth spread up my arm, soothing, numbing. The grief, the loneliness, the crushing weight of being alone in the world, it all began to melt away. Peace, such sweet, silent peace. Then I saw it. Behind Mom's reflection, in the warped glass, the woman in the floral dress stood waiting. Her black eyes held no peace, only hunger. And behind her, dozens of others, men, women, children, all pale, all smiling with too many teeth, all reaching toward the glass. They weren't offering peace. They were offering oblivion, erasure. They wanted my pain, yes, but they wanted me more. My memories, my face, my name. I yanked my hand back. The glass snapped shut with a sound like a bone breaking. My reflection snapped back to my own terrified face, but on my wrist, where the glass had touched my skin, a thin red line appeared, like a scar, like Eleanor's. The mirror fogged again. New words formed. You can't run from what you carry. I grabbed Mom's photo, shoved it in my pocket, and kicked aside the dresser. I flew down the stairs, taking them two at a time, not caring about the groans, not caring about the mirrors lining the landings. In each one, I saw flashes, not of myself, but of the others. The woman in the floral dress running down the stairs ahead of me, a child with hollow eyes staring from a second-floor mirror, a man in a bellhop uniform, the same one from the grand view, watching from the lobby mirror, polishing a key. I burst through the front doors into the cold night air. I didn't stop running until I reached my car 3 blocks away. I fumbled with the keys, engine roaring to life. As I peeled away from the curb, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The Ravenswood Grand stood dark against the starless sky, but every single window on the 3rd floor glowed with a soft, silver light, and in the center window of room 314, pressed against the glass, was my own face, watching me leave, smiling. I drove for hours through state lines, until the gas gauge blinked empty. I found a cheap roadside motel, new, fluorescent lit, blessedly mirror-free, and collapsed on the scratchy bed. I slept for 12 hours straight, woke to sunlight, to birdsong, to the smell of coffee from the diner next door. I was safe. I was free. I bought a bus ticket out of town that afternoon, one way, no destination, just away. The bus station was crowded, smelly, real. I bought a greasy burger and a soda, savoring the mundane chaos. As I waited for my bus, I wandered to the restrooms. Inside the women's room, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and directly opposite the door, mounted on the chipped tile wall, a mirror. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Don't look. Don't blink. I backed slowly toward the exit, eyes fixed on the door handle. But as I turned, my gaze flickered to the glass. My reflection stared back. But it wasn't alone. Behind me, in the mirror's reflection of the restroom, stood the woman in the floral dress. Her hand rested on my reflection's shoulder. Her black eyes met mine in the glass. And she smiled. On her wrist, the scar pulsed red, matching mine. I ran out of the restroom, past the confused ticket agent, out into the parking lot. My bus was boarding. I sprinted toward it, fumbling for my ticket. As I climbed the steps, I turned for one last look at the station. Every window in the building reflected the afternoon sun. But in the restroom window, the glass was dark, and pressed against it, watching me board the bus, was not one face, dozens, pale faces, hungry faces, Mom's face among them, all smiling, all waiting. The bus doors hissed shut, the engine rumbled to life. As we pulled away, I kept my eyes forward, fixed on the road ahead. But in the small, convex mirror above the driver's seat, I saw them, not in the station anymore, in the reflection of the bus windows, sitting in the empty seats behind me, the woman in the floral dress, the hollow-eyed child, the bellhop, and in the very back seat, barely visible, Mom. She raised a hand, waved. I closed my eyes, pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the bus window, tried to breathe, tried to be still. But the reflection in the window wasn't my own. It was the lobby of the Ravenswood Grand, the mirrors lining the hallways, the archway of darkness where the end mirror had been, and standing in the center of it all, facing me, was my own face, calm, empty, at peace, holding out a hand. You can't run from what you carry. The bus rolled on. The highway stretched ahead, endless and gray. I didn't open my eyes again. I didn't need to. I could feel them behind me, in the seats, in the glass, in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, waiting for me to look, waiting for me to remember, waiting for me to finally let go. Some doors don't lead out. They lead deeper in.